Chapter 881. If you're hungry, then go and have your breakfast. Gong Coco stuttered as she replied. She instinctively moved away from Jiang Shanka to avoid that dangerous weapon. At this moment, she was completely naked. In Jiang Shanka's hands, her skin was as smooth as silk. Jiang Shanka narrowed his eyes and revealed an expression of enjoyment. A fire ignited in his eyes. His heart softened last night, and he didn't eat this little fellow. Then let's do it now. With that thought, Jiang Shanka suddenly flipped over and pressed Gong Coco under his body. Feeling that hard thing dangerously pressing against her, Gong Coco was stunned. Could it be that she could control this thing without using her hands? Because at this moment, both of Jiang Shanka's hands were by her side. Seeing that Gong Coco was staring at him suspiciously, her delicate face and big bright eyes were tempting Jiang Shanka to go deeper. He licked his lips and stared at her as if she was his prey. He said in a hoarse voice, "I want to eat you." Gong Coco was completely confused. Was it what she understood? This person wanted to eat her? He wanted to eat her flesh. Could this be how this world treats outsiders? He realized that she wasn't Gong Coco, so he wanted to eat her? She had nurtured her delicate skin for 18 years. She didn't want to give it to a man-eating monster. Gong Coco was shocked, scared, and angry. She wasn't going to sit still and wait for death. Therefore, that pair of beautiful eyes turned and turned, and in the end, she actually nodded. Seeing that she didn't resist, Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You're really willing to let me eat you?" Through the thin material of his clothes, Gong Coco could feel the shocking heat from his body. It was clearly a matter of life and death, but she had a strange feeling. It was as if her body was soft, as if he was melting her. She suddenly pulled herself back to reality. She decided to let him lower his guard first. "I'll let you eat, but don't come so close." Jiang Shanka's expression was even more confused. "You want to take the initiative?" Gong Kiki quickly nodded her head, but her entire body was tense as she guarded against his gun. Jiang Shanka got up and knelt on the bed. He wanted to see what this little thing was going to do. However, without the cover of the blanket, Gong Kiki lay naked on the dark bed sheets like a banshee. The overwhelming temptation made Jiang Shanka have the urge to press down on her again without caring about anything else. At this moment, Gong Coco suddenly, she sprung up at an extremely fast speed, grabbed Jiang Shanka's gun, and pointed the muzzle elsewhere. Jiang Shanka was shocked, but the next second, Gong Coco pushed him down on the bed. Gong Coco used her other hand to pinch his vital part accurately. She did this series of actions very smoothly. However, the strange thing was that Jiang Shanka let out a muffled groan before she exerted any force on his vital organs. It sounded like he was in pain. What was even stranger was that there was a tinge of pleasure in that pain. Gong Coco frowned and then realized that there was something wrong with the gun she was holding. It was hard, but it was so hot that it didn't feel like metal. Her series of actions made Jiang Shanka gasp. His face darkened and then turned red. Did this girl know what she was doing? "Let go." "No." Gong Coco answered instinctively. She even tried to pull it out, but she couldn't. At that moment, Jiang Shanka's expression became even more interesting. Gong Coco suddenly thought, could it be that she had made a mistake? This person didn't have a gun? She remembered that she had once seen a father-in-law with a scary lump of flesh on his neck. Could it be? Gong Coco pinched it again, then suddenly retracted her hand. She wiped it on the bedsheets with a look of disgust. If that was really the case, then wouldn't she be embarrassed? She had even grabbed someone else's flesh. Ugh, how disgusting. Jiang Shanka didn't know how to describe his feelings. Any man wouldn't be able to stand being treated so rudely, okay? His face was dripping with water as he glared fiercely at the innocent girl on the bed. Gong Coco seemed to realize that she had done something wrong. She didn't move and looked at him pitifully. It wasn't her fault. She didn't want to touch it either. If it wasn't for his misleading words, it would have been scary. Gong Coco lowered her head guiltily. Jiang Shanka looked at her. He was really angry and helpless. "Tell me, you really don't know what is this on my body?" His tone was very cold. It made Gong Coco feel like she had done something wrong and was being scolded by her brother. She shook her head sadly. She really didn't know. If she knew, why would she touch it? Jiang Shanka felt speechless for the first time. What era did this woman live in? How could she not know the difference between men and women and not know anything about men? Perhaps only those unmarried girls in ancient times didn't know about these things. Suddenly, something flashed through his mind. He thought of the strange words Gong Coco used. What husband, what servant? He suddenly had a strange thought. She was talking about the people from their place. He already had so many children at such a young age. Also, her abnormally delicate skin and the noble aura that only came from a person of high status. She was clearly very quick-witted, but she was very ignorant of everything around her. Could it be she was from ancient times? After living for over 20 years, Jiang Shanka was shocked by his own thoughts. He stared at the girl in front of him without any change in his expression. That sharp gaze made Gong Coco tremble slightly. "Coco, do you know who is the emperor now?" He tried to ask in a calm tone. Gong Coco was confused. Did he realize that she was an outsider or not? How could she know who was the emperor now? I didn't leave the house before. I don't know who is in power now." Gong Coco's answer confirmed Jiang Shanka's suspicions. His heart beat twice, and he suddenly said, "So, you're not from this world, and you're not her. You." Gong Coco's eyes widened, but she quickly calmed down. It was good that she was found out. She didn't have to pretend anymore. She gathered her inner strength in her palm, and her body was ready to move. If she really couldn't, she could still run. Jiang Shanka seemed to have seen through Gong Coco's premeditated plan and threatened her. "Although you're not her, you have a face that is exactly the same as her. So what?" Gong Coco frowned in annoyance. How could she encounter such a thing? It was so troublesome. Jiang Shanka smiled slightly. "Now her body is gone. That means that people will only think that you are her. And she really has a lot of enemies." Gong Coco gritted her teeth. "I'm not easy to bully." Jiang Shanka suddenly laughed. "Do you know why she married me? She and I are actually not husband and wife." "Why?" Gong Coco asked curiously. "Because I can protect her." His tone had a hint of bewitchment. "I can protect her and protect you." Chapter 882. Gong Coco froze for a moment. She wasn't stupid. This person could tell that she wasn't from this world. Yet he said, "If I can protect her, I can also protect you." Did this mean that he was willing to take her in? Jiang Shanka sat on the edge of the bed and smiled slowly. "Perhaps you don't know how our world deals with outsiders. If they find out that you're not from this world, they'll capture you and do research on you. They'll do all sorts of experiments on you. Do you know what experiments are?" Gong Coco looked at him blankly. Experiments are to inject different drugs into your body and test your reactions. The process is worse than death. Even if you die, they'll slice you up and study you. But you're so precious, they won't let you die so easily. If you're captured, they'll torture you for decades. When that time comes, you'll only be able to eat tasteless liquid food and live a life of darkness like a prisoner. Gong Coco was already frightened, but she pretended to look at him calmly with her big eyes. "You're lying to me, right? How can it be so scary?" Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows slightly. "If you're captured by good people, you might be fine. But if you're captured by bad people, your fate might be even worse than what I just said." Gong Coco saw that his expression didn't seem to be fake. She thought for a moment and showed a pitiful expression. "Then you mean you're a good person?" Jiang Shanka looked at her meaningfully. Of course I'm a good person." Sitting in the nanny van, Gong Coco still didn't understand how she signed a contract with Jiang Shanka. Jiang Shanka had to protect her safety, help her integrate into this world quickly, help her keep her secret, and provide her with a satisfactory, high-quality life. And what she had to do was to be a good wife during the contract. "Wife?" Gong Coco looked at Yu Tian strangely and asked, "What do you think makes a good wife?" Yu Tian was stunned and said shyly, "I don't know. I'm not married yet." "Then what do you think?" Yu Tian thought for a while and said embarrassedly, "Isn't it said on the internet? There's only one kind of wife that a man wants the most, and that's the kind that below the bed is a rich lady, and on the bed." "On the bed?" Gong Coco asked shamelessly. You already know the answer. Yu Tian gave Gong Coco a push in embarrassment. Since they had arrived at the set, she quickly got out of the car and slipped away. Gong Coco was a little confused. As soon as she got out of the car, she saw her agent. How did she know her? This was the homework that Jiang Shanka gave her in the morning. He let her see a lot of photos and understand the basic network. Her agent was a woman in her 40s. She didn't seem to like her because the first time she looked at her, there was a hint of hostility. Gong Coco was puzzled. Wasn't she the one who brought her here? Why was he still hostile towards her? At this moment, Xuewen walked over and said with a smile, Sister Yun, I already said that you don't have to worry about me. Just keep an eye on Xiaofeng. When she saw Xuewen, Lu Yun's expression instantly changed. No, I'm here to look for him today. You do what you need to do. Only then did Gong Coco realize that she and Xuewen had the same agent. Then why was Xuewen so cold towards her? As if they weren't close. Before Gong Coco could understand, Lu Yun walked over. When she saw her, Lu Yun's attitude immediately became bad. Gong Coco, how many times have I told you? Don't cause trouble for Wenwen on set. Do you think it's easy for you to get into this set? If it weren't for me and Wenwen, the director wouldn't have let you in. It's fine if you're not grateful, but you're stealing the limelight. Do you believe that I'll make you leave the set? Gong Coco frowned. She was the princess of Daiyu State. No one dared to speak to her like this. Bastard, who do you think you are? What right do you have to order me around? Lu Yun frowned and shouted exaggeratedly. Gong Coco, you're really bold. How dare you speak to me like this? Her shout attracted the attention of the other people in the set. However, this was Gong Coco's private matter, so they couldn't interfere. They could only pretend that they didn't hear anything and walked away. Why wouldn't I dare? Gong Coco frowned. She felt that it was really inconvenient to have no one to order her around, so she had to do it herself. Gong Coco took a step forward. The aura that belonged to the eldest princess made Lu Yun feel a little timid. She grew up in a feudal era where the strong preyed on the weak. The aristocratic aura that came from her bones was especially evident when she was angry. You said that you're my agent? Then I don't want you anymore. I want someone else. Lu Yun wanted to be firm and tell her that she couldn't change her agent just because she wanted to. However, in front of Gong Keek's excessively beautiful eyes that were filled with anger, she actually became weak and stuttered as she spoke. You can't change me. Gong Coco was even more furious. There was nothing she couldn't do. After thinking about it, she immediately took out her phone and called Jiang Shanka clumsily. Jiang Shanka was already in the company. He was in a meeting. At this moment, the marketing manager was angrily talking about his next sales plan. At this moment, Jiang Shanka's phone rang. Everyone stared at Jiang Shanka because the CEO's phone never rang when he was in a meeting. This must be his personal phone. Everyone thought that Jiang Shanka would hang up the phone. After all, there were many old directors present. However, Jiang Shanka suddenly knocked on the table with a pen. Pause. Rest for 10 minutes. After saying that, he got up and walked to the rest area. He pressed the answer button, leaving everyone looking at each other. Coco. When Gong Coco heard his voice, she instantly became more confident. Although she was no longer a princess, she had made a contract with someone else. Jiang Shanka, I'm being bullied. Are you going to help me? When the three words Jiang Shanka came out of Gong Coco's mouth, the room instantly fell silent. Everyone on the set was pretending to be busy, but in fact, their ears were focused on this area. They didn't know the reason why Gong Coco suddenly joined the cast. Many people guessed that she had used unspoken rules to get the position. Now that they heard such a big shot from her mouth, they couldn't help but think to themselves, could this be Gong Coco's new sugar daddy? How could she be related to CEO Jiang? Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows slightly. A trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. On the phone, his voice, which was as pleasant as a cello, came through. Who dares to bully my baby? Tell me, I'll help you. Jiang Shanka's voice was neither loud nor soft. Everyone in the meeting room heard it. Oh my God! What did they hear? The person who called CEO Jiang wasn't a very important multinational company partner, but CEO Jiang's lover. Chapter 883. Gong Coco smiled proudly. My agent said that I was disobedient and that I got into the crew because of her and Shui Wan. Jiang Shanka sneered. I was the one who asked you to get into the crew. It has nothing to do with them. Gong Coco was stunned. She looked at Lu Yun, who was a little uneasy, and said, You are too shameless. It was Jiang Shanka who asked me to join the crew. How can you say that it was because of you and Shuewen? Gong Coco didn't know how to beat around the bush. She was just asking the question as it was. Lu Yun was speechless. Was it really President Jiang on the other end of the phone with Gong Coco? That was impossible. Didn't they have a bad relationship? But if it wasn't President Jiang, how did Gong Coco know that it was President Jiang who asked her to join the crew? Seeing that she didn't speak, Gong Coco pouted and said to Jiang Shanka, She just warned me not to steal other people's limelight, or she would kick me out of the crew. Jiang Shanka's eyes flashed with anger when he heard that. How could his little cutie be threatened by others? So he sent a message out with another phone, but he was coaxing her gently. Okay, don't be angry. It won't be good if you get angry. I've already helped you teach her a lesson. She will disappear from your sight soon. Gong Coco thought for a moment and took the opportunity to add a request. Then I want to change my agent. Okay. Change. He paused. Did Shuewen bully you too? Should I help you deal with her? Gong Coco thought for a moment. Although Shuewen didn't like her, they didn't have any grudges. So she said, You don't have to do anything to her. Just help me get rid of this agent. Seeing that Gong Coco was serious, Lu Yun finally panicked. Are you really talking to President Jiang on the phone? Lu Yun could be said to have asked the entire crew's thoughts. Gong Coco frowned and didn't want to talk to her. At this moment, Lu Yun's phone rang. She picked it up and her face turned pale. What? Fire me? I didn't do anything. Gong Coco was relieved to see that Jiang Shanka acted so quickly. She ignored Lu Yun's shouts and walked to the side with the phone. He said briskly, You're really fast. Thank you. Jiang Shanka smiled. Little guy, you've learned how to intimidate others so quickly? Gong Coco blushed. Would she say that she had been a fox using the tiger's might since she was young? She thickened her skin and said in a low voice, Anyway, you said you would protect me. Have you figured out how to be a good wife? Jiang Shanka's words were like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The entire conference room was boiling with excitement. Their president was actually married. Married? What's that sound? Gong Coco asked curiously. Jiang Shanka glanced over, and all the voices disappeared. He continued to say gently, You haven't answered me yet. Gong Coco thought for a moment. Since you've done me a favor, I'll repay you when we get back tonight. Oh, how are you going to repay me? Oh, you'll know tonight? Gong Coco hung up the phone after saying that. What a magical thing. She could talk and hang up whenever she wanted. On the other side, Lu Yun had already been dragged out by the director. Shuewen was also stunned when she was suddenly informed of the change of manager. She had been watching the show from the side, but at this moment, how could she not understand that Gong Coco had really found a big sugar daddy? Hence, Lu Yun was changed just like that. There was no room for negotiation. Gong Coco didn't know that her phone call had skyrocketed her status in the crew. The director hurriedly ran over and said seriously, Kiki, why would I bother Director Jiang if there's anything? He's my friend in the crew. If there's anything, just say the word. Uncle Jean will help you solve it. Gong Coco looked at him strangely. At this moment, the entire crew was a little chaotic. After Lu Yun was chased away, Shuewen also asked the director for leave to return to the company. Gong Coco's scenes were brought forward. It was still a scene with Meng Xiaoqing. First, they finished filming yesterday's scenes. Then there was a scene where they drank and chatted happily together. When the set fell into silence again, Meng Xiaoqing finally arrived. Although he was frightened yesterday, he wasn't injured at all, so he still came to the set today. Most importantly, he had thought about it all night and decided to thank Gong Coco. Before filming started, he went up to Gong Coco. Kiki, yesterday, thank you. Meng Xiaoqing said this unnaturally. Because Gong Coco liked him, he had always avoided her. This was the first time he took the initiative to talk to her. Gong Coco shook her head nonchalantly. It's okay. Yesterday, Meng Xiaoqing had taken the bullet for her. Last night, the director had fired the person hanging on the wire and sent him to the police station. She didn't know how the director had negotiated with Meng Xiaoqing's team in private. What she knew was that there was another person in the crew who didn't get along with her and might harm her again. Seeing Gong Coco staring at Lu Lan, who was touching up her makeup, he was a little unhappy. In the past, Gong Coco's eyes were always on him. When did she ever look at someone else? So he said carelessly, "To express my gratitude, I'll treat you to lunch." Gong Coco glanced at him and realized that he hadn't left. She wanted to reject him at first, but then she thought that in order to quickly understand the world, it was best to observe more. She couldn't just focus on one thing, so she nodded and agreed. Meng Xiaoqing was delighted because he felt that Gong Coco still liked him. Also, he looked at Gong Coco from the corner of his eye. He realized that Gong Coco was actually quite good-looking. She had such delicate skin, big bright eyes, and an indescribable air of nobility. It was nobility. People couldn't help but be attracted to her. The shooting in the morning was very fast. Meng Xiaoqing brought Gong Coco to a restaurant near the set. The restaurant was very secluded and was a place he frequented often. It was Gong Coco's first time out with someone. Everything around her was very novel. Smelling the fragrance in the air, she suddenly couldn't wait. The food in this world was very delicious. She wanted to eat more today. Thus, Gong Kiki waved her hand and said, "Give me a portion of your signature dishes." Meng Xiaoqing opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. He didn't believe that a female celebrity like Gong Coco could eat that much. But after the dishes were served, Gong Coco overturned Meng Xiaoqing's understanding. During this time, he couldn't even get a word in because Gong Kiki was eating very happily. Although her movements were still very ladylike, her speed was very fast. Just by watching her eat, Meng Xiaoqing actually felt a little hungry. But as a young hunk, he was very picky and put down the food after 2 mouthfuls. Chapter 884. Gong Coco saw that he was eating so delicately. She blinked and used the serving chopsticks to add a piece of prawn for him. "Thank you for treating me to a meal. Is it because I've eaten too much that you're embarrassed to eat?" Her simple and direct words stunned Meng Xiaoqing. He looked at Gong Coco in amusement. "Didn't your manager tell you to maintain your figure and not eat too much?" Gong Coco was shocked. Could it be that she had exposed herself again? Her adorable look made Meng Xiaoqing even more amused. He reached out to touch Gong Coco's head and said seriously, "It's okay, continue eating. I heard that you fired your manager. Aren't you afraid of people talking about you now?" Gong Coco nodded as if she understood, but she was much more careful. Speaking of this, Meng Xiaoqing couldn't help but ask, "Oh yeah, President Jiang, who is he to you?" The whole morning, the crew had been talking about Gong Coco hooking up with a big shot. He felt a little uncomfortable because he thought that Gong Coco liked him. Gong Coco blinked. She wanted to say that they were now a contractual couple, but then remembered that they had a secret marriage. So she compromised and said, "He's now my backer." Meng Xiaoqing was amused by her straightforward words. He looked at Gong Coco's eyes. They were clean and clear, without any distracting thoughts. Her words were also not ambiguous. He didn't know why, but he was sure that she and Jiang Shanka didn't have the kind of relationship that others thought. Just then, Gong Coco suddenly heard some noise. She turned her head and saw a group of people surrounding the building opposite. She asked curiously, "What are they doing?" Meng Xiaoqing looked over and quickly realized that something was wrong. "Oh no! Someone is jumping off the building." "Jumping off the building? It's suicide," Meng Xiaoqing said as he pointed to the top of the building. There was indeed a person standing at the edge. Gong Coco asked curiously, "She wants to die? But why?" In her opinion, this world was so beautiful, especially to women. It was much better than their era. Why did that woman want to die? "Let's go take a look." Meng Xiaoqing thought that she wanted to join in the fun and didn't want her to go. The police will be there later. As a public figure, you shouldn't show your face in public. Gong Coco thought for a moment, then suddenly reached out and tore off a section of the tablecloth. Meng Xiaoqing was stunned. This tablecloth is very thick. Then he saw Gong Coco cover her face with the tablecloth and smile at him. Isn't that enough? Don't come over. Don't come any closer. He doesn't love me anymore, so I might as well die. Miss Lin, don't be impulsive. You're still so young. It's not worth it for a man. On the top floor, the girl in black was facing off against a large group of policemen. And in a place where the girl couldn't see, there were policemen who were preparing to sneak up on her and pull her down. Gong Coco and Meng Xiaoqing watched from below. Because everyone's attention was on the stage, no one noticed the two oddly dressed people. Meng Xiaoqing didn't want to come no matter what, but Gong Coco was surprisingly strong. He had dragged him here by force. He could only pray that he wouldn't be recognized. He didn't want to have any scandals with Gong Coco. Let's go. Meng Xiaoqing tugged at Gong Coco's sleeve, but Gong Coco didn't move. She was listening attentively to what the girl was saying. Why did he break up with me? I was so good to him, but he fell in love with someone else and even wanted to marry her. Why? The girl's heart-wrenching voice made Gong Coco a little confused. What did she mean by love? Why did she want to commit suicide if she didn't love him? It was so good to be alive. Miss Lin, please come down. Mr. Li will be here soon. If he sees you committing suicide, he won't be happy. The girl smiled. You're lying to me. She stepped back slowly. Today is his wedding day. He won't be here. When I called him earlier, I said I wanted to commit suicide. He said, if you want to die, then go ahead. At this moment, the policemen who were secretly approaching had found the right opportunity. They pounced on the girl while she was talking. At this moment, a sudden change happened. They didn't expect the girl to dodge. She turned around and jumped down the stairs. Miss Lin! There were screams coming from downstairs. The policemen upstairs couldn't bear to watch. They didn't expect such a good life to be lost just like that. But what they didn't expect was that there were continuous screams coming from downstairs. The police officer was a little puzzled. He leaned on the armrest and looked down. The scene in front of him stunned him. He saw that the girl who had jumped down didn't fall to her death. She was caught in midair. That person was holding on to the banner of the building and shaking it in midair. Both of them were suspended in midair. Oh my God! Quick, pinch me! Did that person just fly up? Superman? Spider-Man? It seemed to be a woman. She even covered her face. Could she be a hidden martial arts master? Can someone explain to us how she just tiptoed and jumped up the tree? Is this the legendary Qing Gong? The most surprised person was Meng Xiaoqing. Just as everyone was screaming, the girl jumped down the building. At the same time, the girl beside him flew forward at an outrageous speed to catch her. She actually managed to catch him, and now, Gong Coco was holding the girl's waist with one hand and holding onto the banner with the other. Others felt that it was very difficult for her, but only Gong Coco knew that she was quite relaxed. Why did you seek death? Gong Coco asked, puzzled. The girl's face was ghastly pale. Sometimes, people seeking death depended on that one breath. But after she jumped down, she regretted it, because it was too scary. She regretted it when she thought of how she would be smashed into a pulp while that man would still get married and have children. She even felt that she was too stupid to do this for a man. But she didn't expect that after she jumped down, she would be saved. Why did you seek death? The girl heard the person who saved her ask. I don't want to die. The girl stammered, especially now that her feet were in the air. That fear rushed from her feet to her scalp. You don't want to die again? Gong Coco raised her eyebrows slightly. She loosened her grip, wanting to teach this suicidal person a lesson. So you sought death just to scare people? The girl felt the strength around her waist loosen. She was so frightened that she used all four limbs to cling onto Gong Coco. Gong Coco said naughtily, if you don't speak, I'll throw you down. I'll speak. I'll speak. The girl said anxiously, the person I like dumped me. He's going to marry someone else today. Gong Coco said righteously, then why don't you like someone else? Her words stunned the girl. Mother said that the thing that this world doesn't lack the most is people. If one person leaves, there will be countless people to replace him. The girl suddenly showed a sorrowful expression. Some people can't be replaced by anyone. Gong Coco thought for a moment. You mean you still want to seek death? No, 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 I won't die. The girl said hurriedly and finally said softly, I will learn to forget him. Chapter 885. When the girl said that, Gong Coco smiled proudly. Just then, the police arrived. They carefully pushed open the window and reached out to Gong Coco. There was even a young policeman who shouted, Heroine, let us help you. Gong Coco guided them to grab the girl's hand. Very quickly, the girl was successfully rescued. Just as the police were about to save Gong Coco, she suddenly loosened her grip on the banner and fell down quickly. The onlookers below once again burst into exclamations. Gong Coco actually landed very smoothly. Although she wasn't wearing a skirt, when she landed, she still gave people a feeling of floating. As soon as she landed, she ran towards a place with fewer people. When everyone reacted, they all chased after her. Only Meng Xiaoqing was still in a daze, somewhat unable to recover from his shock. When did Gong Coco become a martial arts expert? He hadn't been in a daze for long when Gong Coco had already removed the mask covering her face and appeared behind him. She patted his shoulder. Hey, what are you in a daze for? Her bell-like voice woke Meng Xiaoqing up from his dream. You! Meng Xiaoqing suddenly widened his eyes and looked at her. Didn't she run in that direction? How did she appear behind him? Gong Coco saw that at this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of his usual handsomeness. Instead, he looked a little silly. This is not the place to talk. Let's go. With that, she pulled Meng Xiaoqing and ran. Along the way, Meng Xiaoqing's emotions were very complicated. Clearly, Gong Coco had suddenly shown an extraordinary side. He should have felt afraid, but for some reason, when he was pulled by her soft little hand, his mind went blank. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was that Gong Coco would not hurt him. The place where they were filming was a scenic park. Because the production crew was rich and had booked the entire scenic area, they were safe after entering. Meng Xiaoqing sat on a deck chair in the forest. He couldn't take it anymore. He had never run like this before. It was simply killing him. Gong Coco blushed and sat beside him without panting. She said curiously, You're too weak. You're a man. What's wrong with men? Meng Xiaoqing panted as he turned to glare at her. Do you think that everyone is like you? He paused for a moment and couldn't help but ask, All right, what you used just now was Qin Gong? Does Qin Gong really exist in this world? Gong Coco smiled, revealing two small canine teeth. Of course. Don't you have kung fu? The man by Jiang Shanka's side was obviously good at external martial arts. You have kung fu. Meng Xiaoqing was also someone who had seen the world. Naturally, he knew that there were still many capable people in their country. But what you're doing, climbing several floors with your bare hands to save people, is too exaggerated. Fortunately, you covered your face. Otherwise, the whole world would know about you by tomorrow. Gong Coco felt a little guilty. She seemed to have accidentally done something out of line again, so she quickly put on a serious expression. Then you must not tell anyone. Meng Xiaoqing frowned. Why? You're so good. Why don't you let others know? You even acted bravely for a just cause. With a little publicity, you'll be famous. Gong Coco blinked and panicked. Anyway, you're not allowed to tell anyone. Can you keep it a secret for me? Meng Xiaoqing suddenly had an epiphany. It must be because Gong Coco's master was very mysterious. Naturally, he didn't like her to be so flamboyant, so he said it generously. Okay, I won't tell anyone. Gong Coco's eyes lit up. She didn't expect Meng Xiaoqing to be so easy to talk to. She quickly put on a bright smile and showered him with nice words. You're such a good person. Thank you. When she smiled, she was so sweet, especially when the warm sunlight shone on her face through the shade of the trees. Her face seemed to glow. Meng Xiaoqing's heart suddenly skipped a few beats. He opened his eyes in shock and lay on the recliner in a daze. He was afraid that Gong Coco would see his embarrassment. Seeing this, Gong Coco also lay back, looking a little tired. She had the habit of taking afternoon naps. After eating and exercising a little, she was a little sleepy now. So even though the recliner was very uncomfortable, she still closed her eyes and mumbled, "Okay, let's take a rest now. I'm a little sleepy." After she finished speaking, her long eyelashes were completely lowered. She was taking a nap under the sun like a cat. The side of her face seemed to be magical. Meng Xiaoqing leaned closer to take a look and realized that there were no pores or traces of makeup on her face. No wonder the makeup artist kept saying that her skin was good in the morning. Her skin was fair and smooth. It made people want to take a bite. Meng Xiaoqing's Adam's apple bobbed, and he suddenly said, Didn't your manager tell you not to get so much sun to maintain your skin tone?" Gong Coco didn't open her eyes and said lazily, "Don't worry, I won't get tanned." As she spoke, her voice became softer and softer. She was obviously very sleepy, but her brows were slightly furrowed. She seemed to be very uncomfortable sleeping on the back of the recliner. Meng Xiaoqing said in a curious manner, "Why don't you sleep on my lap?" He couldn't say what he was thinking. Yesterday, he still hated Gong Coco, but now, he felt that he wanted to be close to her. When the tired Gong Coco heard this, she didn't stand on ceremony. Her body tilted and fell on his lap. Her entire body curled up on the recliner, and she looked even more like a cat. Meng Xiaoqing's hands hung in the air, afraid that he would be rude to her. However, her satin hair was really very eye-catching. When the sun shone on her hair, it had a watery luster. Meng Xiaoqing didn't move for a while. In the end, seeing that she was in a deep sleep, he carefully put his hand down and gently touched her hair. Gong Coco didn't react. She even unintentionally rubbed against his hand. In the past, she had also slept on her brother's back. Her brother would also touch her hair. This was a completely subconscious reaction. But Meng Xiaoqing was not her brother. Feeling the furry touch on his palm, as well as her response, Meng Xiaoqing suddenly felt that his heart was filled with something soft, and there was no longer any space for anyone else. He lowered his head and smiled sweetly. It felt really good to be liked by Gong Coco, but he didn't know that this scene was seen by someone in the dark. Shuewen looked at the two people not far in front of her with her eyes wide open. If it weren't for Gong Coco's phone call in the morning, she wouldn't have been running around and exhausted all morning. But in the end, she still couldn't get Lu Yun out. Lu Yun was mercilessly fired by the company. It seemed that all this was really the work of President Jiang. However, Gong Coco hooked up with President Jiang, and now she hooked up with Meng Xiaoqing. Meng Xiaoqing had some feelings for her before, but now he had an ambiguous relationship with Gong Coco. Was he trying to take advantage of her? Chapter 886. Thinking of this, Shuewen secretly took a photo and left. The scenes in the afternoon went very smoothly, especially her scene with Meng Xiaoqing. Gong Coco didn't know how to act. She was just acting as herself. She had plans to stop acting after this drama. She didn't study acting, and as a princess, she didn't have the desire to show her face in public and be watched by everyone. But in the last scene, Gong Coco ran into some trouble. This scene was after the princess returned to the palace. Coincidentally, there was a banquet in the palace, and all the young ladies gathered. The female lead was being bullied by the princess she played. After the princess performed, she forced the female lead to perform as well, wanting to see the female lead make a fool of herself. In the end, the female lead's skills were naturally better, causing the entire hall to cheer. It was a slap to the princess's face. Gong Coco was speechless at this scene. When she was in Dayu State, who dared to ask her to perform at banquets? Were they tired of living? However, she also knew that this was just acting. She couldn't take it too seriously. If she really took it seriously, although this was a period drama, it was completely incompatible with the era she was in. It was completely out of place. But here came the problem. Originally, the princess played the zither and the female lead danced. However, the zither double suddenly had something to do and couldn't come. The director thought about it and asked Gong Coco to do it personally. He wanted her to act like she was playing the zither and add in the sound in post-production. Gong Coco felt that it was more convenient for her to play a song instead of acting. Thus, she said, "No need, I know how to play the zither." Gong Coco knew how to play the zither? Many people who knew some inside information looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. Although Gong Coco was a member of the Gong family, she was the illegitimate daughter of the Gong family. She was raised in the countryside and was only brought back when she was 16. How could such a girl know how to play the zither? Gong Coco didn't care about those mocking gazes. Her thoughts were simple. If there was a zither in this world, then it wouldn't be out of line for her to play a song, right? After being stunned for a moment, the director also showed an expression of disbelief. However, since Gong Coco wanted to play, he would not disagree on her request for the sake of Jiang Shanka. So he braced himself and agreed. In his heart, he thought that since there was still post-production, there was no need to worry. Gong Coco sat down in front of the zither under everyone's complicated gazes. As a princess, the head of the noble young ladies, other than studying, she usually learned various skills. She had always regarded her mother as a role model. How could someone like her be mediocre? Although there was no incense, and the zither was not a good zither, Gong Coco endured it and attached her inner force to her fingertips to prevent the zither strings from hurting her hands. As soon as the director shouted to start shooting, she thought for a while and played a very famous song in Dayu State, Glory and Splendor. This song was divided into 3 parts and time was limited, so she played the most important part of it. Her slender, jade-like fingers were attached to the strings of the zither, raising the ordinary zither to a higher level. She seemed to have a magical power. Once she entered the state, it was as if she had become a real noble young lady. Everyone's eyes fell on Gong Coco. At this moment, she was wearing a gorgeous princess dress and sitting in front of the zither. The noble aura that she inadvertently exuded made people unable to take their eyes off her. In the short span of a day, they all felt that Gong Kiki had become much prettier and had an outstanding temperament. Just like now, she was just sitting there and posing, but she already gave off the feeling of a big family. It was no wonder that she was able to seduce President Jiang. However, the moment the first note came out, everyone was stunned. They did not know why, but they felt that their minds were empty. This was because Gong Coco had accumulated inner force in her hands, so the notes she played were fuller and more distant. It could make people feel refreshed. The next gorgeous movement came out coldly. Everyone could not help but hold their breaths, as if they did not want to disturb her. The gorgeous palace instantly became the background. It was as if only the sound of the princess playing the zither could be heard. Meng Xiaoqing was originally reading the script, but when he heard the sound, he could not help but look over. At that moment, he held his breath and focused. It was as if he had seen the real princess. His heart was beating faster and faster. Meng Xiaoqing suddenly blushed. He thought that he seemed to like Gong Coco. A little time was limited. The short 5 minutes of music ended, but the people on the set were still in a daze. When they came back to their senses, their first reaction was to applaud. They had completely forgotten that they were still filming. The director was stunned. He did not expect Gong Coco to really know how to play the zither. Moreover, a few minutes of music was so captivating. Most importantly, he could tell that the song was an original. He had never heard it before. He shouted excitedly, "Did you record it just now? Just use the original." She played it so well. He could not help but ask Coco, "Coco, what song did you play just now? I don't think I've heard it before." Gong Coco simply said, "This song is called Fu of Glory and Splendor." The director was delighted. It was indeed a song that had not appeared in the modern world. Moreover, the style of the song was very suitable for the palace. That kind of graceful and luxurious atmosphere was something that the impetuous modern music industry could not create. Thinking of this, his face was full of smiles. He asked eagerly then, "Coco, can I use this song as the ending song for our drama?" Gong Coco saw that some people liked their song. She smiled faintly, giving off a proud and likable feeling. Of course. However, at this moment a shattering sound was heard. It turned out that Shuewen had accidentally smashed a cup. Shuewen was a dancer. Basically, she had to show off her dancing skills when filming dramas. However, if she really put Gong Coco's zither song in front of everyone who would watch her dance, how would she be able to achieve the effect of full applause? Wen's anger woke the director up from his dream. He revealed a troubled expression and suddenly did not know what to do. Firstly, he really could not bear to part with Gong Coco's song. Secondly, for the sake of the plot, he really could not let Gong Coco steal Wen's limelight. At this moment, an assistant beside Wen smiled and said, "I didn't expect Coco to play the zither so well. If this is broadcasted, people won't be able to see our one. Gong Coco asked curiously, "Is it wrong for me to play it well? Then let's do it again. I missed it by a bit." No, that's not what I meant." The assistant revealed a shrewd smile. The scenes can be changed. For example, the female lead and second female lead will both play the zither. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble Coco to be one substitute. Let's play the song just now. This way, the second female lead will play the zither first. If she misses it by a bit, the female lead will present this song. Wouldn't this be more comparable and highlight the female lead more? Gong Coco blinked and did not say anything. Although Wen did not say anything, her expression showed that she agreed. The director was a little conflicted. Let the second female lead be the female lead substitute. Then, in order to highlight the female lead's strength, the second female lead played the zither herself. Wasn't this bullying? Chapter 887. Moreover, it was such a good song. No one would agree to it if it was given to someone else just like that, right? If the second female lead was an ordinary person, it would be fine. She would just treat it as a loan and use it to clear her name during the ending song. However, Gong Coco was recommended by President Jiang. Seeing that the director was silent and seemed to be tempted and hesitant, Wen's assistant went straight to Gong Coco. "Kiki, for the sake of the film's effect, I'll have to make you suffer." Gong Coco looked at the woman who was smiling amiably and raised her eyebrows slightly. "Make me suffer? No way." She was a princess. How could she suffer for no reason? Everyone present had different expressions. The assistant's smile froze on her face. She said threateningly, "Kiki, we're all in the same production team. You don't have to be so petty just to borrow a song from you, right?" Just to borrow a song? Everyone looked at her with disdain. Although they were not in the music industry, they knew that the value of this song was not small. If they really did as she said after the drama aired, this song would probably become Wen's. She was clearly snatching it. Although Gong Coco did not care about a song, she was not someone who was willing to be taken advantage of. She sat there and said without hesitation, "Since she thinks that I play well, she can just dance better and suppress me. In the end, she wants me to use my own song to defeat myself just because she can't beat me? That's too shameless. I'd rather play poorly than be disgusted by someone like that." Her rude words made the scene very awkward. It was impossible for the director to give up a good song, and Wen was even more unwilling to be suppressed. At this moment, Lulan, who had been keeping a low profile the whole day, suddenly ran out and said, "I've been feeling unwell the whole day. I was just resting when I heard this commotion. I was wondering what was going on, so it's about this." Lulan smiled and walked to Gong Coco's side. "Kiki, you're really too much. Aren't you the most generous? Just lend the song to Wen and be her stunt double. If this goes on, the recording will be delayed." Gong Kiki glanced at Yution's angry face and suddenly understood. She hadn't figured it out from the start. Lulan liked her husband and wanted to snatch the second female lead from her. Why would she drink Lulan's drink and end up in the lake? But now he understood. The only explanation was that the original Gong Kiki didn't like Jiang Shanka. That was why she didn't have any hostility towards Lulan. In fact, their relationship was quite good. However, the reason was unknown. However, Gong Coco now knew that Lulan had an ulterior motive for approaching her. Not only did she want to steal Jiang Shanka, but she also wanted her life. How could she let Lulan get close to her? "You're really generous." Gong Coco saw that she had been avoiding her all day and knew that she must be up to no good. So she said, "I haven't settled the score with you yet. I drank the drink you gave me yesterday and almost couldn't get up. You want justice? Explain this matter to me first." Gong Keek's words shocked everyone. There was such a thing? Lulan's face turned pale. She saw that Gong Coco didn't come to her all day, so she thought that yesterday's incident was over. She didn't expect that Gong Coco would say it out loud. What nonsense are you talking about? I didn't give you any drink. Gong Coco raised her eyebrows and pointed at the assistant next to her. You didn't? Yesterday. I heard her whispering to the man who was hanging from the wire. She even gave a man a card, but something happened to the wire. How are you going to explain this? I'm afraid that you wanted to harm me, but you harmed the wrong person. Gong Coco's words stunned the director. Then he said seriously, Kiki, is what you said true? You really saw it? Last night, when he sent the man to the Public Security Bureau, the man didn't say anything. He only said that he was obsessed. It turned out that he had taken money. Gong Coco nodded and said without blushing, I wasn't sure at first. Later, when I saw that something was wrong with the wire, I connected the two. Everyone had different expressions. This was not a small problem. If a crew was involved in such a dirty trick, it would have a bad influence. Lulan's face turned pale. She quickly said, It wasn't me. I didn't. Gong Coco, do you think you can slander me with only one side of the story? Where's the evidence? Gong Coco looked at her and told her firmly, The evidence will be here soon, because Jiang Shanka told her that he would deal with yesterday's incident. Therefore, Gong Coco looked at Lu Lan with pity. You'll know what will happen to you tonight. Her tough words were like a death sentence for Lu Lan. If something really happened to Lu Lan that night, it would definitely be President Zhang's doing. They didn't know how important Gong Coco was in President Zhang's heart. Since he was willing to go to such lengths for her, they weren't just ordinary lovers, right? Everyone's impression of Gong Coco improved. When Gong Coco saw that her unintentional action had actually caused others to be afraid, she, who had long mastered the art of intimidating others, smiled at Shui Wen and asked in an extremely arrogant manner, Do you still want me to be your stunt double? As an A-list actress, Shui Wen's career had been smooth sailing. When had she ever been bullied like this? However, she knew that her sugar daddy was definitely no match for Jiang Shanka. So, in a fit of anger, she ran away without saying anything. The assistant beside her was a little scared, especially when Gong Coco looked at her. Her legs trembled. She quickly put on a fawning smile. Coco, don't be angry. We were just joking. Gong Coco then said to the director, Director, you can decide if you want me to perform this song or play it a little worse. But being a stunt double is too much of a bully. I won't do it. At this moment, the director nodded with an ugly expression. Shui Wen ran away, and he still had to clean up the mess. Lu Lan was no longer smiling. She was filled with fear. Would something really happen to her tonight? No way. President Jiang didn't have a good relationship with Gong Coco. He wouldn't go to such lengths for her. Besides, she did it so secretly that no one could find out. Gong Coco must be exaggerating. Moreover, she had the Gong family behind her. Even if Jiang Shanka wanted to save her face, he couldn't disregard the Buddha, right? After messing around for a while, Gong Coco didn't care about Meng Xiaoqing's hesitant gaze and returned to the Jiang family. It was so tiring to be an actress. She really had a fulfilling day today. When she returned, she saw that Jiang Shanka was also back. He was sitting in the living room with a strange expression. When he saw her, he waved at her. Gong Coco walked over curiously and saw Jiang Shanka pointing at the newspaper on the coffee table. Tell me. His voice was indescribably relaxed. Why did you fly into the air to save someone when you were filming? Gong Coco looked down. Mysterious heroine saved in a thrilling manner. Was it Qing Gong or superpower? Gong Coco was embarrassed. But this wasn't the end. Jiang Shanka took out his phone and opened a photo. It was a photo of her sleeping on Meng Xiaoqing's body in the afternoon. Jiang Shanka asked with a faint smile, and this explained it. Chapter 888. Inexplicably, Gong Coco felt guilty. Strange, why did she feel guilty? Why did she feel like she had done something wrong, and her brother was punishing her? Nothing to say? Jiang Shanka asked with a faint smile. His attitude and tone were clearly very gentle. But why did she feel even more nervous? Gong Coco stood in front of Jiang Shanka and lowered her head, feeling wronged. Sorry, I didn't know there was no Qin Gong here. To be honest, this was also out of Jiang Shanka's expectations. He thought that Gong Coco only practiced external martial arts, just like the bodyguards beside him. He didn't expect her to know Qin Gong as well. Sure enough, she didn't learn anything in the morning. Once she went out, she caused trouble for herself. Jiang Shanka's fingers lightly tapped on the sofa's armrest as he looked at her with a smile. Although his eyes were smiling, it didn't reach the bottom of his eyes, making people feel afraid. What else? Also, Gong Coco bit her lips. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. I shouldn't have slept on Meng Xiaoqing's lap. So you still know that men and women shouldn't touch each other, Jiang Shanka said ambiguously. Gong Coco felt even more wronged and was very unhappy. Since she was young, she never learned female discipline. Although she heard people say that men and women shouldn't touch each other, she almost never left the palace. Other than reading, she would stay in her small workshop. It could be said that she didn't leave the house at all. The only brother she had an intimate relationship with was also a man, so she gradually didn't put this sentence in her heart. Mother said that men and women were the same, so she didn't feel any difference between her and her brother. Now that she was in this damn place, she was restricted everywhere. Even her brother didn't care, but this person wanted to care about her. Humph! She didn't want to listen to him. Gong Coco's dissatisfaction was written all over her face. Jiang Shanka sighed in his heart. She was an ancient noble lady. Her noble temperament was indeed nurtured by an ancient noble family. But as an ancient girl, shouldn't she have learned the 3 obediences and 4 virtues from a young age? Why was she so bold and fearless? He still needed to know more about it. Come here. He reached out to Gong Coco. Gong Coco turned her head to the side. Although she felt that he was as dignified as her brother, she didn't want to listen to him. She snorted. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. If you have something to say, just say it. Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows. This little girl actually used the words that he lectured her to block him? His temper was not small. It's different. Have you forgotten? Last night, we already had intimate contact. In your world, intimate contact means that you're husband and wife, right? Therefore, I am not an outsider. You can get close to me. Speaking of this matter, Gong Coco was embarrassed. In the past, when she couldn't sleep at night, she would ask the head palace maid to sleep with her. She was used to it, but according to what he said, she had to take responsibility for what happened last night. Besides, they were just a contractual couple. Since he wanted to tell her that there was a difference between men and women, why couldn't she treat him as an outsider? What happened last night was an accident. I won't hold it against you. We're not really husband and wife, so I don't want to get close to you. When she said this, Jiang Shanka was a little displeased. This little girl had just arrived yesterday. She was easier to deceive and cuter when she was in a panic. Once she got used to it, she would be like a cat with its claws raised. It was hard for people to get close to her, Jiang Shanka said unconcernedly. Originally, I wanted to tell you about your current identity and the things that you need to pay attention to. Since you don't want to come, then forget it. When Gong Coco heard this, her expression instantly became conflicted. She now had a troublesome face, so naturally, she wanted to get rid of the trouble. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. She really wanted to understand what kind of situation Gong Coco was in this world. But she absolutely couldn't go to him and admit defeat. The little princess raised her little chin proudly and said loudly, according to the contract, you have the obligation to tell me these things. Don't you dare use this to threaten me? Jiang Shanka said unhurriedly, according to the contract, during the contract, you have to be a good wife. But you won't even come close to me. Jiang Shanka sneered. Then why should I help you? You. Gong Coco was conflicted. Why did she feel that what he said made sense? Forget it. She had no choice but to lower her head when she was under someone else's roof. She would tolerate him for a few more days. He was the only person in this world who knew about her identity and secret. Other than him, There seemed to be no one else she could trust. So Gong Coco walked unwillingly to Jiang Shanka's side and said with dissatisfaction, "All right, I'm coming over. Hurry up and tell me." Jiang Shanka sat and raised his head to look at the little fellow who was just inches away from him. At this moment, her cheeks were slightly puffed up, and her fair face had turned pink because of her anger. Such delicate skin really made people want to take a bite. "Come, sit in my arms." Jiang Shanka coaxed her in a low voice. Gong Coco asked gloomily, "Is this what a good wife should do?" She suddenly had an epiphany and asked cautiously, "We are only a contractual couple. You won't want me to give you a child, right?" Jiang Shanka suddenly laughed. It was different from a sneer and a sneer. He was really happy. Why was this little girl so cute? He narrowed his eyes and thought for a moment. In a low voice, he said, "Don't worry. I don't want a child now. But if she did, he wouldn't mind giving birth to it." Gong Coco was relieved, just as she was conflicted about whether she should listen to him or continue arguing. Jiang Shanka suddenly reached out and pulled her into a hug. With a warm and fragrant jade in his arms, Jiang Shanka even felt that Gong Coco's body had a sweet milky fragrance. Their eyes met. Gong Coco's eyes widened. Jiang Shanka seemed to be pleased by her expression. He lovingly pinched her nose. "Do you want to hear it? If you want to hear it, then don't resist. Remember, during the contract, we are husband and wife." "Husband and wife?" Gong Coco frowned. For the first time, Gong Coco, who had always had a vague concept of this word, had a question. What exactly was husband and wife? On the other side, Jiang Shanka, who had hugged Gong Coco, was in a good mood. His attitude softened, and he gently told her, "Husband and wife are husband and wife. Whether it is a contract or not, at least within the contract, our relationship is real just like your parents. So, from now on, you have to keep a distance from men because you have me." "Just like my parents?" Gong Coco thought of her parents, and her expression was filled with longing. He said it simply, but Gong Coco believed that in this world, there wouldn't be a good man like her father. Her parents had gone through so many trials and tribulations before they were together. It wasn't something that could be imitated by a marriage contract. In the end, Gong Coco didn't argue with him. She nodded because Meng Xiaoqing was just an ordinary friend to her. This afternoon, he was willing to keep her secret, which made her feel that this person was quite easy to get along with. But that was it. Chapter 889. Seeing that Gong Coco was obedient, Jiang Shanka was in a better mood. He took out his phone and clicked on a document sent to him by his assistant. "Your current identity is Gong Coco, the daughter of the Gong family in Hayden City." As Jiang Shanka said this, a picture of a girl who looked very similar to the current Gong Coco appeared on his phone, followed by her life story. However, the girl's skin was darker, and she was thinner. Her eyes were gloomy. Although she was quite pretty, she was much worse than the current Gong Coco. Gong Coco looked curiously at the girl, who looked very similar to her. Jiang Shanka said that her body was not found. So did that mean that she was still alive? Jiang Shanka continued. The Gong family is one of the most influential families in Hayden City. She was the eldest daughter of the Gong family, but her father divorced her mother and remarried. So she grew up in the countryside with her mother. She knew about her background when she was very young, so she was mentally unbalanced when she was young, which led to her being lonely and gloomy. Later, her mother died, and she was brought back. The main reason was that the only young master of the Gong family had leukemia, and her bone marrow was a good match. She saved young Master Gong's life, but her life in the Gong family was very miserable. Later, her stepmother wanted to marry her to a 60-year-old man. So she took the token her mother gave her before she died and came to the Jiang family. At that time, my mother had a headache, but there was no one around. Her mother, who was sweeping the floor, sent my mother to the hospital. Because of the timely rescue, my mother was fine. My mother gave her a token so that she could come to the Jiang family for help if she was in trouble. At this point, Jiang Shanka frowned. Later, because the Gong family wanted to force her to marry someone, In order to solve this problem once and for all and dispel the Gong family scheme, my mother begged me to marry her directly. However, in the end, we only held a banquet and did not register the marriage, so it was not a real marriage. So you were a fake couple? Gong Coco touched her chin and suddenly thought of someone. She hesitated and asked, "Is it because she likes Meng Xiaoqing? Is that why she rejected you?" Jiang Shanka didn't expect Gong Coco to know about this. "I heard that she fell in love with Meng Xiaoqing because he helped her when she was a trainee in the company after she was spotted by a talent scout. However, she wasn't the reason we faked our marriage." Jiang Shanka sneered. "How could his marriage be manipulated by a little girl? We have a private agreement. On account of her kindness, I can help her get close to Meng Xiaoqing. I can even help her gain a foothold in the entertainment industry. When we divorce in the future, she won't be manipulated by the Gong family anymore." "What about her?" Gong Coco asked curiously. "What does she want to repay you for helping her like this?" "Her?" As long as she didn't appear in front of him, that was enough. But in order to make the little girl not afraid of him, he would not say it out loud. "Of course, I will help her unconditionally." Actually, the original Gong Coco did like Meng Xiaoqing. She came to the Jiang family because she was at her wit's end. She only wanted to ask for help. However, after seeing Jiang Shanka, she changed her mind. Otherwise, there were many ways to help her. Jiang Shanka's mother wouldn't force him to marry her. However, how could Jiang Shanka be manipulated by a woman? Although he didn't know why his mother liked her so much, he didn't like her. That was why they faked their marriage. He could help her settle the Gong family, give her resources to let her have a smooth career in the entertainment industry, and even help her chase after Meng Xiaoqing. However, she couldn't have any ideas about him. This marriage had no legal effect. Moreover, it was a secret marriage and could be dissolved at any time. Gong Coco asked gloomily, "So you mean that if I don't want to be your wife, the Gong family might treat me as her and deal with me?" However, when she thought about it, it didn't make sense. She was already married. Could it be that they wouldn't let her off after the divorce? As if reading Gong Coco's thoughts, Jiang Shanka explained, when she found out that she was going to marry an old man in his 60s, it was the miss of the Gong family who told her. At that time, the two of them got into an argument. In her anger, she used a broken piece of porcelain to cut the miss of the Gong family's face. She was disfigured. Gong Coco hissed. She could imagine how much the miss of the Gong family hated her. No wonder Jiang Shanka said that she had many enemies. Gong Coco's face fell. "So, I'm tied to you for the rest of my life?" No, she had to work hard. If she was more powerful than the Gong family in this world, the Gong family naturally wouldn't be able to hurt her. Jiang Shanka stroked her hair. "I've already found evidence about Lu Lan. The police should be at her house by now. The reason why she and your manager are targeting you is because of the Gong family. Now that you're still my wife, they think that our relationship isn't good. Although they don't dare to do it openly, they've started to do it secretly. You have to be careful." Gong Coco quickly caught the main point. "So you're saying you're more powerful than the Gong families?" Gong Coco's eyes sparkled as she looked at Jiang Shanka with anticipation. This silly girl. No man could bear to disappoint her when she looked at him with such anticipation. Fortunately, Jiang Shanka was indeed more powerful than the Gong family. Jiang Shanka smiled and nodded. "Probably a little more powerful." He deliberately narrowed the gap between the two families to make Gong Coco feel threatened. "Then if they find out that you and I have a good relationship, will they not dare to do anything to me?" Jiang Shanka laughed secretly and nodded. "What you said is very possible. That's why I said that I want you to be a good wife. This is also a request made to protect you." Gong Coco suddenly felt that this person was good. He actually helped her for free. However, Gong Coco suddenly remembered that this man was evil towards her last night. She frowned and said suspiciously, "Are you really as good as you say? If you're good to me, why did you lie to me last night?" He even said that he often helped his wife bathe and that he had a good relationship with his wife. So it was a fake marriage. Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows and said seriously, "I was just suspicious of your background, so I did it to test you." Gong Coco thought about it. and felt that what he said made sense. In that case, her luck was not bad. She met a good person who helped her unconditionally. She was a little suspicious. Mother said that there's no free lunch in the world. I'm your wife. In the end, I'm still taking advantage of you. How about this? Tell me, what else can I do? I can't always take advantage of you, right? Jiang Shanka suddenly moved closer and sniffed her hair before speaking in a hoarse voice. I have insomnia, but I feel very at ease hugging you. If you really want to repay me, let me hug you to sleep in the future. Chapter 890. Gong Coco wanted to agree, but she was hugged to sleep by him. When she was young, she had been hugged to sleep by her father, and she had also been hugged to sleep by her mother, but she was hugged to sleep by Jiang Shanka every day she hesitated. Even if it was the head palace maid, it was only because she wanted the palace maid's sister to accompany her that she could get on the bed. Why was she so passive here? Jiang Shanka saw her long eyelashes trembling nonstop, as if she was struggling. He said softly, "You just said that I can make any request." Gong Coco blushed. The first princess kept her word. Wasn't it just sleeping with him? All right, I'll promise you. But you're not allowed to lie to me again. You have to seriously teach me about this world. If I find out that you lied to me again, I'm not easy to bully. Gong Coco glared at him fiercely. Jiang Shanka chuckled, nodded, and hugged her even tighter. What should he do? She was really cute. He also liked the soft and bouncy feeling of her body, as well as the faint milky fragrance. However, hugging her through her clothes was not as comfortable as hugging her naked body last night. Her body was like the best silk. Thinking of this, Jiang Shanka actually felt that he couldn't hold himself back. However, Gong Coco's senses were extremely sharp, and she frowned. There's something hard on your body. It's hurting me. Then she suddenly thought of something terrible, and her body bounced up, but she was quickly held down by Jiang Shanka. He obviously thought of the same thing as Gong Coco. Seeing that she was in such a hurry to escape, he couldn't help but ask in a somewhat angry tone, "Where do you want to escape to?" Gong Coco smiled embarrassedly and moved her but a little further away. This person had a lump on his body, and it was so big. He must feel inferior in his heart, so it was better for her not to provoke him. Jiang Shanka narrowed his eyes. He was speechless at her lack of common sense. He asked dangerously, "Do you know the difference between a man and a woman?" Gong Coco was frightened by his gaze and replied vigilantly, I know. Then tell me, what's the difference between men and women?" Jiang Shanka was almost angered to death by this little thing. She actually thought that he had something that shouldn't be there. Gong Coco counted with her fingers. Men have Adam's apple, but women don't. Women have breasts, but men don't. And there's more? Their eyes met. Gong Coco was confused. Jiang Shanka took a deep breath. He didn't expect that one day he would have to teach others basic physiological knowledge. When you were young, you never asked where you came from. Gong Coco nodded again and said with a blank face, "I did. Mother said that she and father obtained me from practicing martial arts." "What kind of martial arts?" Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows. Gong Coco replied loudly, "Dual cultivation." Even though he knew that he shouldn't, Jiang Shanka couldn't help but smile. He held back and asked seriously, "Then do you know how to dual cultivate?" Gong Coco said gloomily, "Mother didn't have time to teach me before she left with father." Her expression also became lonely. Jiang Shanka thought that Gong Coco's mother was dead, and he accidentally poked at her sore spot. Looking at her sad expression, his heart softened. He thought, forget it, there's still a long way to go. Anyway, the little girl is mine. He didn't need to be so anxious. Next time, he would find some videos for her to watch. Ahem. After coaxing Gong Coco for a while, Gong Coco's mood improved. Her impression of Jiang Shanka increased a little. She felt that he would coax her when she was unhappy. He was a very good person, so he comforted her. "Don't be sad. God is fair. You're so rich and so good-looking. Even if you have a hidden disease, it doesn't matter. Anyway, no one can see it when you wear clothes." Gong Coco's caring words made Jiang Shanka's face darken again. He had changed his mind. He was determined to let this little lass gain some knowledge and let her know that the thing that men hated the most was the word hidden illness. However, Gong Coco smacked her lips and interrupted his anger. Jiang Shanka, I'm hungry. Let's go for dinner, okay? Being looked at with such expectation, which man could refuse? The anger in Jiang Shanka's heart suddenly disappeared. What else could he do with such a living treasure? He could only spoil her. He sighed. He felt that he had sighed more in the past 2 days than he had in the past 20 years. But he decided to ask for a little benefit. Kiss me, and I'll take you there. Gong Coco blinked and looked at him in confusion. When she was young, she often kissed her father, mother, and brother. But when she grew up, she didn't like family anymore. Because she had grown up, she shouldn't be clingy. Why was Jiang Shanka still so childish? However, she didn't hesitate for long. She kissed Jiang Shanka's face. When her soft lips suddenly pressed against Jiang Shanka's face, Jiang Shanka suddenly felt his heart beating faster. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Gong Coco. They were so close that Gong Coco could completely feel his scorching hot breath. She was stunned by his stare. Is it not enough? She frowned, but still very obediently kissed Jiang Shanka on the other side of his face. She moved closer once again, letting Jiang Shanka clearly feel the comfort of being wrapped in something soft. His heart beat faster again, and his breathing became hurried. This was a throbbing that he had not felt in the past 20 years. This girl, no wonder he wanted her the moment he saw her. Gong Coco kissed him and moved away, but she was in Jiang Shanka's arms. Jiang Shanka suddenly lifted her up and lowered his head to kiss her delicate little mouth. Gong Coco's eyes widened. For the first time, she forgot to react, but her hands on Jiang Shanka's sleeves suddenly tightened. She was obviously at a loss. Jiang Shanka didn't stop after kissing her. Instead, he carefully traced her lips. That kind of ambiguity, from their intertwined breaths, gradually heated up. Gong Coco's hands tightened. Her mind went blank, and she completely forgot to breathe. It was Jiang Shanka's first time kissing a woman, but he was definitely self-taught. How could her sweetness be enough? He directly penetrated it domineeringly. Gong Coco was completely stunned at this moment. Her teeth were easily pried open by him. She was like a pitiful little girl who was being bullied by a man. This kind of obedience undoubtedly increased the man's desire. Feeling that Jiang Shanka was putting something into her mouth, Gong Coco was shocked and instinctively wanted to push him away. But her body suddenly gave birth to a strange desire, and it gradually heated up. This unfamiliar feeling made her hesitate, and it was also this hesitation that made her lose the chance to push him away. Instead, he hugged her even tighter. Just like a domineering king, he wantonly invaded her territory and stole her breath. Chapter 891. For the first time in her life, Gong Coco understood that kissing and kissing were different. Kissing was very intimate, but kissing would make a person's mind blank and unable to think. Their body would go soft, and they would become very strange. This was the first time in her 18 years of being a virgin that she had experienced this difference. Moreover, it didn't seem so annoying. She couldn't help but lick the other party's soft lips. Gong Coco's initiative was no different from a catalyst for Jiang Shanka. He stopped and looked at her. His dark eyes became even deeper, as if he was about to go berserk. Gong Coco was startled and quickly broke free from this strange feeling. Before Jiang Shanka could kiss her again, she jumped out of Jiang Shanka's embrace like a rabbit. Jiang Shanka's eyes flashed with a trace of annoyance. The fact that his little cutie knew martial arts was what he was most dissatisfied with. Gong Coco's face was already as red as a peach. She didn't know why she was blushing. Before, when she saw Jiang Shanka, she was very normal, just like when she saw her brothers, eunuchs, and palace maids. But after being kissed by him, Gong Coco suddenly didn't dare to look at him. When she was young, She had also seen her mother and father kiss. She had always been very curious about what was so good about the mouth. So whether the mouth was good or not wasn't the main point. The main point was that people would become dizzy. It was really amazing. She wanted to do it again. After this thought popped up in Gong Coco's mind, she felt shy for the first time in her life. She felt that she shouldn't think like that. It was too embarrassing. She then lowered her head even more. Jiang Shanka was originally a bit angry, but when he saw that this little lass's face was actually red, his heart became much happier. As expected, he still had his charm. It wasn't that there was a problem with him. It was just that this little lass was too slow. He was afraid that he would scare this little thing if he was too aggressive, so he suppressed the thoughts in his heart. He walked over and held her hand as he gently said, "Let's go and eat." Gong Kiki quietly nodded and allowed him to hold her hand as they walked. During this time, she secretly sized up his hand and discovered that his hand was big and her hand was small. When they clasped their hands together, there was an indescribable sense of harmony. Just as she was in a daze, they arrived at the restaurant. Although there were only 2 people eating, there were 36 dishes on the table. There were 5 main dishes, but the portion of each dish was very small. The plates were heated automatically, so when the lid was removed, the color and aroma of the dishes were at their best. Gong Coco's eyes lit up. She felt extremely happy. When she was on set, Jiang Shanka's assistant, who was sent to secretly protect her, would send her food. It was delicious, but it was not as amazing as this table full of food, although the food in Dayu State was also very delicious. And the food provided to the Imperial Palace was all of the best quality. It was no match for the modern people who had so many condiments. On top of that, Jiang Shanka was rich. He was good at everything he ate and used. So, Gong Coco felt that eating every day was the happiest time of her life. Jiang Shanka was afraid that she would not be used to using knives and forks. So he separated all the dishes that required knives and forks and placed them on Gong Coco's plate. When Gong Coco saw dishes that she had never seen before, she insisted on asking. Fortunately, Jiang Shanka was knowledgeable and could answer all her questions. In the end, he waited for her to finish eating before he started eating. The housekeeper watched from the side. His expression did not change, but his heart was already in turmoil. It seemed that the young master was really sincere this time. He had never seen the young master so patient. Gong Coco also felt a little embarrassed. As a princess, she used to eat and use the best food. Even if she saw something that she had never seen before, she could still remain calm. Perhaps because she had let down her guard around Jiang Shanka, she did not have to hide anything in front of him. She could ask whatever she wanted. After dinner, Jiang Shanka took her to the flower bed in the Jiang residence for a walk. Even he felt that he had changed. In the past, no matter how good the flowers were at home, he would not take a look at them. But today, when he saw Gong Coco accidentally eat too much and looked very upset, he suddenly remembered that there was a garden at home that they could take a walk in. So he wanted to take her to see it. At this time, the sky was already dark. The gentle lights in the garden lit up the flowers as if they were sleeping. As the two of them walked in the garden, it was as if they had mistakenly entered a quiet and peaceful kingdom. There were not as many servants here as there were in the Jiang residence. It was just the two of them. Gong Coco's heart skipped a beat. She did not know why, but she was reminded of the kiss from before. When she rinsed her mouth after eating, she saw that her lips were a little swollen. Thinking of this, her face became redder and her heart beat faster. "What's wrong?" Under the night sky, Jiang Shanka's voice was like a cello. It was obviously elegant and deep, but there was a hint of seduction in it. Gong Coco did not dare to look at his handsome face under the light. Her eyes drifted and looked elsewhere. I was just thinking about who you are and what your status is. You're so rich at such a young age. There shouldn't be many people like you in this world, right? Gong Coco had a sudden inspiration and found an excuse. Jiang Shanka reached out and hooked a strand of her hair with his fingers as he spoke flirtatiously. My status is just a little higher than your enemies. My money is just enough to raise you until you're fair and tender. What about you? What's your status? Am I good enough for you? Gong Coco's cheeks were burning. The word good enough was no longer just a weak adjective in her mind. She finally had the wrong idea and thought of something that made her blush and her heart beat faster. I am the princess of Daiyu State. Daiyu State, Jiang Shanka repeated. He was sure that there was no such country in his historical knowledge. So, the girl in front of him was an ancient princess from another time? Well, only a princess could be so delicate and have such an outstanding temperament. However, he had to tell her, we don't have a Daiyu State here. As expected, he saw Gong Coco's dispirited expression. Jiang Shanka smiled and reached out to lift her chin. He told her solemnly, but I will still spoil you like a princess. Do you understand? Gong Coco was forced to look into his eyes and subconsciously held her breath. The sparkling lights seemed to have drilled into his eyes. They were so dazzling and mesmerizing that it made people sigh. Amidst her throbbing heart, Gong Kiki blinked and asked softly, I'm still a princess? Yes. Jiang Shanka did not hesitate at all. He definitely had the ability to let her continue to live like a princess. Gong Coco grabbed her sleeves a little nervously, but she raised her head proudly. In my place, the princess's orders must be obeyed, and no one is allowed to have any objections. Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows slightly, then held her hand and said seriously, I'll listen to the princess's orders. Gong Coco's lips curled up slightly, and she ordered arrogantly and stiffly, I want you to kiss me again, just like before. Can you make me feel? Before she could finish speaking, Jiang Shanka hugged her waist and pulled her into his embrace. His thin lips impatiently pressed against hers, and he sucked on her sweetness forcefully. Chapter 892. Gong Coco's eyes widened. Once again, she felt that her mind went blank, and she felt like she was floating. The surrounding flowers shyly closed, and little star lanterns surrounded the two of them. Jiang Shanka felt that his heart was beating faster and faster, and he was a little confused. Before, he was only curious about Gong Coco, but in just a day, he found that he had already fallen in love with this girl. She could make his heart beat faster, and she could make him damn obsessed. Gong Coco felt like she was going to die from lack of oxygen. She pushed Jiang Shanka away and gasped for breath. Her eyes were misty, and her lips were red and swollen, as if she had been badly bullied. Princess, are you satisfied? Jiang Shanka calmed his breath and teased her until Gong Coco's face turned red. Then he hugged her and said softly, Do you like it when I hug you? His embrace was very safe. It was hard but also warm. Gong Coco was not a person who did not dare to face her true feelings, so she nodded honestly. Jiang Shanka smiled happily. He liked her honesty. Do you like it when I kiss you? Gong Coco quietly grabbed Jiang Shanka's sleeves, and her whole body tensed up. But in the end, she nodded slightly. Jiang Shanka happily lowered his head to kiss her hair, and his eyes seemed to be filled with a gentle light. Don't be shy. In our world, like and love have to be said. We don't like to hide it in our hearts. You like my kiss, and that means you like me. Coincidentally, I also like you very much. Gong Coco's face instantly turned hot. She burrowed into Jiang Shanka's arms. Like in what? It made her heart flutter. What to do, what to do? She was a princess. How could she be eaten up by a man? And she still had to think of a way to go back. At the thought of this, Gong Coco's originally muddled consciousness suddenly sobered up. She opened her mouth to ask, but instinctively felt that now was not the right time. If Jiang Shanka knew that Gong Coco was thinking about how to leave him at such a warm moment, he would definitely strangle her to death. Anyone who had fallen into his hands could forget about leaving. When the two of them returned, it was already past 9 at night. Gong Coco's biological clock began to protest. She wanted to sleep. Jiang Shanka took her to take a bath. Gong Coco originally wanted to do it herself, but Jiang Shanka refused. Now that we are husband and wife, you don't have to be shy. Gong Coco was used to being served, so she didn't force it. Once again, she was taken advantage of by Jiang Shanka. Her innocent look made Jiang Shanka happy and worried at the same time. In the end, he told her worriedly, "We are husband and wife now. So in the future, other than me, you can't let any other man touch you, not even a woman." Gong Coco was puzzled. Why can't a woman? Jiang Shanka's fingertips lightly brushed against her delicate skin as he announced in a hoarse voice, "Because we are husband and wife. Everything you have is mine. Only I can touch you." His words were too seductive. Gong Coco, who had just been enlightened, became very shy easily. Hearing this, her entire body turned a light pink. In the water, it was indescribably moving. Jiang Shanka felt that he couldn't hold it in anymore. He had waited for so many years and finally met someone he liked. Why should he hold it in? So he said, "I'm done bathing. Get up. Let's go to the bed to apply some skincare products, okay?" Gong Coco nodded and stood up. All the water droplets fell off instantly. Jiang Shanka stood there with a towel. After seeing her get up, there was not a single drop of water on her body. Only then did he understand that the ancient book said that the skin was as smooth as cream and the bones of ice and jade really existed. In the modern world, there was serious pollution. In addition, women came into contact with cosmetics too early. The surrounding radiation was also very high. It was no different from a fool's dream to have skin like Gong Coco's. Jiang Shanka directly put the bathrobe on her body. That invasive gaze made Gong Coco tremble. She was even a little afraid that Jiang Shanka would hug her to sleep at night. She felt that something was wrong. When they got on the bed, Gong Coco rejected Jiang Shanka's offer to apply the cream on her body. Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows slightly, but in the end, he smiled gently. "Okay, I won't move. I'll help you from the side." Gong Coco nodded. However, when she was about to take off the bathrobe and apply the cream on her body, she hesitated. She had never felt that it was inappropriate before, but now she was a little embarrassed, to be honest. "Turn around." Gong Coco found the source of her hesitation. It was Jiang Shanka's dangerous gaze that made her feel uneasy. Jiang Shanka looked at her in amusement. Although this little girl was slow to understand, she was still pure and beautiful. Moreover, he really couldn't look anymore. Just now, when he saw her apply the cream on her legs, he felt that he couldn't control himself. If he continued to look, he would inevitably lose his composure. However, Jiang Shanka thought about it again. He wanted this girl in the first place, so why should he avoid her? At this moment, he heard Gong Coco ask in a low voice, "All right, Jiang Shanka, I accidentally came here. Do you think I can still go back?" Jiang Shanka was stunned. Soon, a strange and urgent anger engulfed him. He turned around abruptly and stared at Gong Coco. "You want to go back?" Gong Coco was shocked. She quickly gathered her clothes with both hands and stared at him with her round eyes. "Oh, my brother is still in Dayu State. He's my only family member. I can't not go back." Her voice became softer and softer because Jiang Shanka's gaze was getting more and more frightening. "I don't treat you well?" Gong Coco was stunned by the question. How should she put it? Jiang Shanka was still very good to her, so she shook her head. "Then why do you want to leave?" Jiang Shanka suddenly walked to the bedside and grabbed Gong Coco's hand tightly. The anger in his eyes was almost tangible. "Isn't it good to stay?" Gong Coco looked at him in surprise. "You treat me well, but I can't abandon my brother. You still have a family, but my brother only has me." Jiang Shanka looked at her nonchalant expression and was almost angered to death. However, he suddenly remembered that Gong Coco's time travel was irreversible. He didn't believe that she could go back. "Give up. You can't go back." "Why?" Gong Coco frowned. "What makes you say that?" Jiang Shanka let go of her hand and looked at her condescendingly. "Time travel is a space-time accident. It's already a miracle that such an accident happened to you once. Do you want it to happen a second time?" His eyes were dark, and his voice gradually lowered. "So since you're here, don't even think about leaving in this lifetime. Don't even think about leaving him." Gong Coco looked at him without blinking. Suddenly, she was angry. "No way. I came from the water. Maybe I can go back as long as I jump down again." Chapter 893. Jiang Shanka sneered and said, "That lake is only so big, but I searched the entire lake and couldn't find the original Gong Coco's body. It's obvious that the space-time exchange has been completed, and this process is irreversible. Give up." Give up? Gong Coco was stunned. She really couldn't go back? She originally wanted to try her best to understand this world, and then find a way to go back. But the truth was, there was no way to go back. Her eyes were sore, and she suddenly felt like crying. If she had been obedient, none of this would have happened. If she didn't appear for a long time, or even forever, how lonely would her brother be? Jiang Shanka was originally still angry, but he saw Gong Coco's tears suddenly fall from her eyes. When she cried, she didn't make a sound, but the big drops of tears that fell inexplicably made one's heart ache. She clenched the bottle in her hand tightly, as if she was trying her best to suppress herself, but her tears fell even more fiercely. The room quietened down. Jiang Shanka saw that she was so sad, and his anger had long disappeared, leaving behind only helplessness. He sat by the bed, and Gong Coco looked away. Jiang Shanka had no choice but to hug her in his arms. Being hugged, it was as if she had found an outlet to vent her grievances. Gong Coco lay on Jiang Shanka's lap and cried loudly. She cried very sadly, as if she wanted to cry out the hesitation and uneasiness that she had been suppressing for the past 2 days. If only I hadn't gone out to sea. I wouldn't have fallen into the water. I wouldn't have come here, and my brother wouldn't have been able to find me. He must be very sad. Although her words made Jiang Shanka very sad, seeing her cry so sadly, Jiang Shanka's heart only ached for her. "Oh, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have disobeyed my brother. I shouldn't have looked for a shortcut. It's all my fault. It's not your fault." Jiang Shanka's hand gently patted Gong Coco's back, comforting her somewhat uneasily. "If you didn't do that, I wouldn't have met you. I really wanted to meet you, and I'm very happy to have met you, Kiki." When Gong Coco heard this, she looked at him with tears in her eyes. Then she burst into tears again. "Although you're very good, I still want my brother." Jiang Shanka's face instantly darkened. Later, Jiang Shanka coaxed her for a long time and even used his killer move, bedtime stories. Only then did Gong Coco slowly calm down. Gently patting Gong Coco's back, Jiang Shanka suddenly felt a sense of conscience. Why don't he eat her later and give her time to adapt? Who asked her to be a princess? Thinking of this, Jiang Shanka kissed Gong Coco's forehead. Looking at her quiet and beautiful sleeping face, he thought helplessly, maybe some people are born to be spoiled, just like her. Before she came, she was a princess. After she came, she moved his heart, and he was willing to be her knight. The next morning, when Gong Coco woke up, her mood was much better. If she couldn't go back, there was a second way. That was to reach the 9th level as soon as possible. Gong Coco secretly clenched her claws in her heart. She would definitely work hard. No matter how difficult the 9th level was, she could definitely do it. Morning, a lazy male voice suddenly pulled Gong Coco back to reality. Only then did Gong Coco realize that she had woken up in Jiang Shanka's arms. No wonder she felt hot the whole night. A morning, Gong Coco didn't dare to look at him. She hurriedly got up. She hadn't washed up yet. How could she meet people like this? But the strange thing was, she didn't mind before. Why did she suddenly mind now? It could only be said that she was enlightened. Jiang Shanka sat on the bed and looked at Gong Coco's nervous expression. He thought proudly. She didn't have any scenes today. Jiang Shanka, who already knew Gong Coco's schedule, decided to give himself a day off. He would take Gong Coco out to play and buy some things that she liked. When Gong Coco heard that Jiang Shanka was going to take her out, her eyes sparkled. She quickly put on her clothes. Her clothes were made of the best silk that Jiang Shanka had bought. Today, she wore a pure white silk dress and a pure cotton coat. As there was still some time before summer, the weather was still a little cold. After she was ready, Jiang Shanka brought Gong Coco to Haijian City's largest international trade center. Along the way, he pointed out the surrounding buildings and culture to her. Gong Kiki was an obedient child the entire time, and memorized every single word he said. When they arrived at the clothing store, Gong Coco liked long dresses. She wasn't interested in clothes that exposed her arms and legs. Jiang Shanka let her be. As long as she liked it, he would buy it. Suddenly, Jiang Shanka's phone rang. He glanced at Gong Coco and asked his assistant to continue following her. He went outside to pick it up. At this moment, a girl walked out of the fitting room. She had a pretty face, but there was a long scar on the left side of her face. After she came out, she looked in the mirror and saw Gong Coco in the mirror. At that moment, her expression changed immediately. Gong Coco. When Gong Coco heard someone calling her, she turned around in surprise. At this moment, Gong Coco's hand was raised high and almost hit Gong Coco's face. Fortunately, the assistant stopped her in time. "Miss Gong, she is the young madam of the Jiang family. Please show some respect," the assistant said coldly and forcefully flung her hand away. "Young madam?" Gong Wanwan sneered. Who doesn't know that young Master Jiang doesn't like her? After being married for so long, she is still a virgin, right? She still dares to say that she is the young madam of the Jiang family. When Gong Coco heard how the assistant addressed her, she guessed that she was the younger sister who often bullied the original owner. For this kind of concubine's daughter, in her era, she didn't even have the right to look at her. Therefore, Gong Coco naturally wouldn't lower herself to talk to her. Her attitude made Gong Wanwan even angrier. In the past, Gong Coco was bullied by her. Ever since she knew that Gong Coco was going to marry an old man, she went to mock her. In the end, she escaped and even scratched her face. After that, Gong Coco changed. She couldn't control other things anymore. In the end, she even married young Master Jiang. That was young Master Jiang. She dreamed of marrying young Master Jiang. She didn't expect that in the end, it was this slut who took advantage of her. "Gong Coco, are you mute? I am your younger sister. You don't even recognize your family after climbing up the tree? I've never seen someone as heartless as you." Her voice was very loud, and the surrounding people looked over. The people who came here weren't ordinary people. Some people recognized Gong Coco's identity and were curious about who Gong Coco was. Gong Coco frowned. She felt that this person was very uneducated to make a fuss outside. She didn't want to cause trouble and turned to leave. However, how could the other party let her go? "Stop!" Gong Wanwan arrogantly shouted to stop her. "Is this your attitude as an illegitimate daughter? Father provides you with food and clothes, but you're turning your back on him now that your wings have hardened." Chapter 894. The words illegitimate daughter were undoubtedly humiliating. Gong Coco glanced at her. She had never seen such a shameless person in her life. The original body's mother was the first wife, but they just divorced. If one really wanted to calculate, the original body was the first wife's daughter. Gong Wanwan's mother was supported by a concubine. To put it bluntly, in front of the original body, she was only a concubine's daughter. As a concubine's daughter, she actually dared to say that the first wife's daughter was an illegitimate daughter. Gong Coco felt sad for the original body. Being born in such a family, it was no wonder that she had a dull personality. Gong Wanwan saw that Gong Coco did not speak and thought that she had returned to the time when she was easy to bully. Her voice became louder. "What are you looking at? Am I wrong? You have no conscience. Ungrateful wretch. How long has my family raised you? We brought you back and let you smoothly climb up the social ladder. But what about you? After you got married, you disappeared without a trace. Not only do you have no conscience, you are also unfilial." When the surrounding people heard this, they all looked at Gong Kiki with disdain. More and more people surrounded the clothing store. Even the store manager couldn't do anything about it. Since ancient times, being unfilial was a big label. Gong Wanwan knew how to suppress people. The assistant saw that this Gong Coco did not know what was good for her and wanted to teach her a lesson. However, Gong Coco reached out and stopped him. From the moment Gong Coco stood out, everyone had a feeling that their eyes lit up. Although Gong Coco was only 18, she was already an old lady in Dayu State. She had seen all kinds of big scenes in the palace. She had also been with Uncle Chio. In terms of experience and bearing, the eldest princess's bearing was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Take Jiang Shanka, for example. Others were respectful to him. Only Gong Coco could treat him normally because they were the same person. However, Gong Coco did not have any tolerance for others. You said that I am an illegitimate daughter? Gong Coco's voice was pleasant to the ears, but it carried an imposing aura. Gong Coco knew something was wrong the moment she opened her mouth. She still had the same face, but she looked much more noble. However, when she thought about how Gong Coco had no background, she puffed out her chest. I'm talking about you. Not only are you an illegitimate daughter, you're also a village woman who grew up in the countryside. That's why they're so uncultured. Gong Coco was amused. Who was the one with no manners? I'm your sister. Tell me, how did I become an illegitimate daughter? Gong Coco smiled mockingly. I'm 24 this year, and you're only 20. Your mother married my father for 21 years. If you say I'm an illegitimate daughter, then what are you? Everyone was in disbelief because Gong Coco looked too young. If she did not say anything, people would have thought she was 16. Therefore, when Gong Coco said she was an illegitimate daughter, they believed her. They did not expect her to be 24 years old. I remember now. She seems to be an actress. Recently, she's acting in the Ming Dynasty. I've seen her on TV before. She's 24, but she's much prettier in real life. Someone in the crowd whispered. Gong Coco was instantly embarrassed. She did not expect Gong Coco to refute. If I say you're an illegitimate daughter, then you are. Your mother shamelessly seduced my father, and you shamelessly seduced young Master Jiang. If you didn't do anything, why would young Master Jiang be with you? Young Master Jiang? There were many people with the surname Jiang in Haidian City, but the only one who could bear the title of Young Master was Jiang Shanka. Who was Jiang Shanka? He was the crown prince of the entertainment industry with countless resources. He was involved in a wide range of fields from film, entertainment, real estate, and shipping. He was involved in all of them and was one of the best in the industry. At such a young age, he was on the list of the world's richest people. He was even more handsome than celebrities. Such a person was undoubtedly a man who could make all the socialites in the country go crazy. And he was together with this third-rate celebrity? Gong Coco found it strange that everyone was suddenly staring at her. However, she was not easy to bully. I didn't seduce anyone. It's Jiang Shanka who likes me. Gong Coco raised her head and said firmly. If an ordinary woman said such words, they would have laughed themselves to death. However, Gong Coco gave people the feeling that she had a strong aura. That pair of beautiful cat eyes glared angrily. With a straight face and a slightly raised chin, there was an indescribable cuteness in her sonorous and forceful manner. The crowd was silent. Gong Wanwan was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud. Gong Coco, are you delusional? Young Master Jiang likes you. It's been so long. Did young Master Jiang touch you? Why didn't he touch her? Gong Coco raised her eyebrows. She felt that such words should not be announced in public. Hence, she only said arrogantly, if he doesn't like me, does it mean that he likes you? Gong Coco's firm words made everyone gasp in surprise. When they looked at Gong Coco's excessively fair and delicate face, they actually felt that what she said made sense. Although she was just a small celebrity, she was so pretty. It was not impossible that young Master Jiang liked her. Outside the crowd, Jiang Shanka couldn't help but smile. They had always kept their marriage a secret. He also wanted to find a suitable opportunity to announce Gong Coco's identity. However, there was no time like the present. Now was not a bad time. Gong Wanwan was forced to take a step back by Gong Coco's gaze. However, when she thought of Gong Coco snatching young Master Jiang away, she felt angry. Then, she glared at the store manager. What are you waiting for? Can anyone buy your family's clothes now? She's just a third-rate celebrity. She can't afford your clothes at all. Do you really think that she's the young madam of the Jiang family? Why aren't you chasing her out? The assistant was a little angry. Miss Gong, don't go too far. Our young master. When did I say that she's not my wife? A low and hoarse male voice was heard. Everyone couldn't help but make a path for him. Many people didn't know Jiang Shanka because he rarely appeared in banquets and magazines. However, there were still people who had seen him before. When he walked in, someone exclaimed, "It's really young Master Jiang." Gong Wanwan was even more shocked. Didn't they say that their relationship wasn't good? Gong Coco also liked Meng Xiaoqing. How could they be out shopping together? When Jiang Shanka saw Gong Kiki looking at him angrily, he hurriedly took a step forward and pulled her into his embrace. He also took the opportunity to kiss her forehead. "I'm really sorry that I'm late. Coco, can you forgive me?" Gong Coco pouted and asked seriously, "Jiang Shanka, you said yesterday that you like me. However, they didn't believe you. Tell them, so that they won't bother me over such a small matter." Jiang Shanka loved her bossy look. His handsome face had a doting smile, but his gaze swept across the crowd coldly. "Whoever doesn't believe me can come and ask me. My wife is timid. Don't bully her." Chapter 895. Timid bullied her? Everyone looked at them innocently. Gong Coco was so strong-willed just now. Who could bully her? Gong Wanwan widened her eyes in disbelief. "Young Master Jiang, you, how can you be with her?" Jiang Shanka smiled. "She's my wife. Why can't I be with her? But you, if you dare to do anything to Coco in secret, you'll end up like Lu Lan last night." His smiling words made Gong Wanwan's legs tremble and her face turn pale. Young Master Jiang was really the one who settled Lu Lan's matter. The word wife was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. They didn't expect Jiang Shanka to really be married. There was no news at all. It was too sudden. Jiang Shanka didn't care about what everyone thought. He carried Gong Coco and walked out. There was a banquet at home in 2 days. It was a good opportunity to announce it. Moreover, he had plans to hold another grand wedding. After throwing everyone to the back of his mind, Jiang Shanka left with Gong Kiki. But just as he was about to board the car, he was blocked by a woman. That woman was very beautiful and probably had a high status. Gong Coco could sense the aura of a rich family's daughter on her. It was far from what Gong Wanwan could compare to. However, she didn't feel threatened at all. She sat in the car obediently and watched as Jiang Shanka was blocked by her. His assistant wanted to step forward, but was stopped by the woman's 3 bodyguards. "Jiang Shanka, who is she to you?" Gao Sun glanced at Gong Coco with evil intentions. She was just a third-rate actress with good looks. How dare she steal her man? Jiang Shanka said impatiently, "Miss Gao, didn't you hear me just now? She's my wife." It turned out that Jiang Shanka had already noticed that Gao Sun was also in the mall. Gao Sun snorted. "Don't try to lie to me. I asked my cousin to check. You didn't even get a marriage certificate. What kind of wife is she?" Jiang Shanka didn't expect her to be so clingy. He frowned and said, "Investigating men without permission? Is this how the Gao family teaches you? Forgive me for being unable to agree. Step aside." "You." Gao Sun glared at him. She was so angry that her eyes were red. As the apple of the Gao family's eye, she and Jiang Shanka were well matched in terms of social status. She had treated Jiang Shanka as her only candidate for a husband since she was young. "Although I don't know where you found this kind of low-class woman to escape from me, but Jiang Shanka, I'm telling you, I will definitely catch up with you." After she finished speaking, she glared fiercely at Gong Coco before leaving with her bodyguards and her stilettos. Jiang Shanka's face darkened slightly. If it weren't for the good relationship between the Jiangs and the Gaos, he really wouldn't have bothered with this woman. After getting into the car, he asked his assistant to drive. When he saw that Gong Coco was looking out the window and not at him, he was a little unhappy. He had performed so well just now. Shouldn't she reward him? Moreover, Wasn't she angry at all after hearing what Gao Sun said? What's the matter? Jiang Shanka kept staring at her. It was hard for her to ignore him. Jiang Shanka sighed inwardly. Although this little girl was enlightened, she was still very slow. He pinched her tender little face and asked unhappily, "Aren't you angry at what that woman said just now?" Gong Coco looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Why should I be angry?" She touched her chin with her fair little hand. "I'm prettier and younger than her." At the mention of this, Gong Coco was very happy. In Dayu State, she was already an old lady at 18. But here she was still in her prime. Which woman didn't want others to say that she was young? Even though Gong Coco used to stay cooped up in the palace and didn't come out, she had heard rumors that there was an old princess in Dayu State who was worried about marriage. But now, she was young again. Jiang Shanka smiled and glanced at her. "Yes, you're young. Where else do you want to go, little one?" Gong Coco didn't have a goal, so she said, "Let's go around. I want to go everywhere." Jiang Shanka thought for a moment. He had a very big flower bed in the suburbs. Gong Coco would definitely like it there. So he said to his assistant, "Let's go to the suburbs." When the car drove to the flower bed in the suburbs, Gong Coco was attracted by the large expanse of flowers and the dreamy little house. Jiang Shanka had a rare holiday, so he told his assistant not to follow him and to walk around by himself. The assistant wanted to say something, but stopped. Not only was he Jiang Shanka's assistant, but he was also his personal bodyguard. But the country's security had always been good, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to leave for a while. So Jiang Shanka and Gong Coco went to the flower bed. On the way, Jiang Shanka told her some basic information about this world as they strolled hand in hand. When the sun came out, Gong Coco took off her coat. Her white silk dress fluttered in the wind, and she looked as clean as an angel who had mistakenly entered the human world. For some reason, Jiang Shanka suddenly felt a lingering fear. If she didn't look like Gong Coco, she wouldn't have been sent to him. What if the person who picked her up was a bad person? So when he saw the girl playing in the flower bed, Jiang Shanka couldn't help but say, "Kiki." The girl glanced back and smiled. The warm sunlight shone on her good mood. She seemed to be a girl who could maintain her optimism at any time. If Jiang Shanka frowned, dressed in a casual suit, he lacked a sense of calmness and gained a sense of youth. At this moment, he was like an inexperienced youth who would fret over small matters. "Actually, it's nothing. I'm just afraid." If the person who met me wasn't you, would you have met a bad person? He thought about how Gong Coco was so innocent that she didn't know anything about men. He felt that it was very dangerous. Gong Coco giggled. Her big cat eyes squinted as she said proudly, "Don't worry. If the person I met at the beginning wasn't you, nothing would have happened." She clenched her fists. "If anyone has bad intentions, I'll beat them up. Although it seems to you that I don't understand a lot of things, but who is good and who is bad, I can still feel it. I thought you were a good person from the beginning." Moreover, she felt that he was a person in a high position. This kind of person would disdain to do bad things to a weak girl. She had always been very accurate in judging people. Jiang Shanka's heart relaxed. To be honest, this was the first time someone said that he was a good person. He was also thinking too much. Anyway, the first person Gong Coco met was him. This fact couldn't be changed. What was there to worry about? Just when it was a sweet and warm moment, Gong Coco's expression suddenly changed. She hugged Jiang Shanka and fell down. A bullet brushed past her body. She was like a cat whose hair stood on end as she stared at a group of people running from afar. "There are bad people?" Jiang Shanka was shocked. He quickly looked at her. "Are you okay?" Gong Coco shook her head. Then she pulled Jiang Shanka and ran. The other party had such a terrifying weapon. If they were to fire together, she might not be able to guarantee Jiang Shanka's safety. Chapter 896. Jiang Shanka hurriedly called his assistant while he was sprinting. "Damn it! Chase them! Don't let them get away!" The man's exasperated voice could be heard from afar, but because the two of them were running very fast, they quickly shook them off and ran to a flower garden warehouse. Jiang Shanka really didn't expect that there would be people who dared to be so rampant in the country. Moreover, how did they know that he didn't go to the company today? It seemed like there was a mole by his side. Kiki, don't be afraid. Someone will come to pick us up in a while. He hugged Gong Coco in his arms, but Gong Coco didn't listen to him. She was listening to the sounds outside seriously. Suddenly, she covered Jiang Shanka's mouth and told him, "Don't talk. Someone's coming." The warehouse door was kicked open. Because it was a flower garden warehouse, rows of metal shelves were filled with nurturing seedlings. The flower garden here wasn't open to the public yet, so there weren't many gardeners. Fortunately, they had let the gardeners go back before they came. Otherwise, who knew what these vicious people would do if they came? Gong Coco brought Jiang Shanka to hide in the large warehouse. There were 6 people on the other side, and each of them had a gun in their hands. They couldn't rashly go against them. "Don't hide, big CEO." The leader of the group, a man in black, ordered his men to spread out and search. He knocked his gun on the metal shelf beside him. His sharp eyes swept across the large warehouse, and the corner of his mouth curved into a cruel smile. "In order to catch you, we prepared meticulously for half a year. It's rare for the big CEO to be in such a good mood today, coming to the suburbs. The heavens are really helping us." Gong Coco's eyes flashed with a trace of guilt. If it wasn't for playing with her, Jiang Shanka wouldn't have appeared here today. They definitely wouldn't have dared to be so rampant in the city. Jiang Shanka squeezed her hand. He already knew who the other party was. This matter was caused by him, and it had nothing to do with Kiki. Even if today didn't happen, they would find an opportunity to make a move one day. Gong Coco suspected that the other party was deliberately hitting the metal frame with a gun to confuse her. However, she still heard someone slowly approaching. She whispered to Jiang Shanka, "I'll take care of this. Don't say anything." Hearing that, Jiang Shanka looked at Gong Coco disapprovingly. Gong Coco was a member of a gang, and these thugs were definitely not ordinary people. How could he let a girl stand in front of him? He was just about to say, "I'll do it." Gong Coco said, "You take care of the one behind." Jiang Shanka nodded and said worriedly, "You have to be careful." However, before he could finish speaking, Gong Coco's men seemed to have heard something and sped up towards them. Gong Coco's hand was as fast as lightning. She tapped the other party's wrist with her left hand, and the gun in his hand fell from his hand. He was shocked. Just as he was about to call for help, Gong Coco grabbed him by the throat and dragged him to a corner of a shelf. Jiang Shanka was relieved to see that she was so efficient. The enemy on his side also heard the noise and ran over. Before he could pull the trigger, Jiang Shanka grabbed his wrist. The other party couldn't help but fire a shot at the ceiling. Just as he was about to call for help, Jiang Shanka knocked him out with a small flower pot. "Over there!" The remaining 4 men heard the commotion and quickly ran to the corner. However, Gong Coco had already retreated with Jiang Shanka. This was Jiang Shanka's first time seeing Qinggong. Even though Gong Coco didn't move much, they were already more than 10 meters away from the corner. At this moment, they were hiding behind another flower shelf and were on high alert. The leader saw that Jiang Shanka had taken care of 2 of his men in one go and that his gun had been snatched away. Could it be that he had made a mistake and that Jiang Shanka's skills were comparable to that of a top-notch expert? Especially the man lying in the corner. His wrist was broken. He was one of the more powerful ones among them, but he was killed without a sound. It seemed that Jiang Shanka wasn't a simple person. The remaining 4 men were on high alert. They didn't expect that there would be a flaw in their seemingly foolproof plan. The leader ordered the remaining 3 men to split into 2 groups to search for Qiao Lian while he held his gun and walked towards the last corner. I couldn't tell that the big CEO was quite skilled. Although he was speaking, his eyes and ears were alert. If there was anything to blame, it was this warehouse that was too big. What an evil rich man. But no matter how skilled you are, you're still no match for us. Are you still waiting for help? The man in black sneered. When we came here, we blocked the only bridge. By the time they arrive, you'll already be dead. He wanted to use this method to destroy Jiang Shanka's faith. However, at this moment, Jiang Shanka whispered to Gong Koko. Don't worry, they can take a plane here. As he spoke, he hugged Gong Koko protectively. Gong Koko was clearly stronger than him, but he still felt that Gong Koko was the one who needed protection. Gong Kiki raised her head and looked at him with a smile. Originally, she was also very worried about the gun in the other party's hand, but now, that fear suddenly disappeared. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed Jiang Shanka. It's okay. Even if there's no one else, I'll protect you. Jiang Shanka's heart inexplicably warmed. If it wasn't for the wrong time, he really wanted to ravage this little thing. Let's see if she still dared to seduce him at this time. At this moment, 3 men came in their direction. Gong Koko whispered to Jiang Shanka to discuss. Jiang Shanka wanted to deal with the 2 men, but Gong Koko shook her head. The other party's leader was still waiting for an opportunity to make a move. They couldn't take the risk. In the end, they decided that Jiang Shanka would deal with the man coming from the left, and Gong Koko would deal with the 2 coming from the right. Jiang Shanka clenched the gun in his hand, then pressed down on Gong Koko and kissed her fiercely. An inexplicable light flashed in his eyes, and his tone was especially serious. Little girl, you can't let anything happen to you. Do you understand? Gong Koko smiled indifferently. I should be the one saying that to you. After saying that, the 2 of them split up. The man Jiang Shanka was dealing with was quite strong, but Jiang Shanka's marksmanship wasn't weak either. When the gunshot sounded, Gong Koko and the 2 men on her side were ready to run in that direction. Gong Koko appeared behind them like a ghost, and then, one in each hand, she finished them off in less than 3 seconds. She hurriedly went to find Jiang Shanka. At this moment, Jiang Shanka and the other man had already fired a few shots. Because there were people to protect, Jiang Shanka suddenly felt that his skills had become much stronger. The last shot, he hit the opponent's wrist. Just as he was about to give the opponent the final blow, Gong Koko's voice suddenly came from behind. Be careful. Jiang Shanka turned around and saw that not far away, the man in black coldly fired a shot at him. Chapter 897. At that moment, time seemed to pass very quickly but also very slowly. In Gong Koko's eyes, the bullet that was flying towards Jiang Shanka's head suddenly became extremely slow, as if she could reach out and stop the bullet. She couldn't let Jiang Shanka die. This belief took over Gong Koko's entire mind. She suddenly reached out her hand and caught the bullet under Jiang Shanka's terrified gaze and the man in black's incredulous gaze. Jiang Shanka quickly knocked out the man in his hands and hugged Gong Koko in his arms. Her hand was still clenched tightly, and blood was flowing out from between her fingers, scaring Jiang Shanka. Before the other party could react, Jiang Shanka hugged Gong Koko and hid. Gong Koko was in so much pain that her eyebrows were knitted together. She was only at the 3rd level of wind and nature and was unable to use her inner strength to materialize. But at that moment, she had gathered all her inner strength in her palm and forcefully materialized her inner strength to catch the bullet. Although it didn't penetrate her hand, it was still embedded in her flesh. Especially since the bullet was very hot. She had never suffered such a serious injury in her life. The man in black finally regained his senses. He wasn't in a hurry to chase after her. Instead, he looked as if he had been frightened and his heart was pounding nonstop. That little girl looked useless, but he didn't expect her to be able to catch a bullet with her bare hands. What kind of monster was she? Jiang Shanka carefully opened Gong Koko's hand. Her palm was badly mutilated and a bloody bullet was stuck to her flesh. Gong Koko gasped and threw the bullet away. At that moment, her hand seemed to hurt even more. At this moment, the sound of a propeller came from the sky. The man in black was shocked. He didn't expect Jiang Shanka's men to arrive so quickly. This was bad. Jiang Shanka saw Gong Koko's injury and his eyes turned red. He said in a low voice, "Rest. I'll be right back." Then, he got up and walked out. The man in black wanted to escape, but was caught by Jiang Shanka. Before he could shoot, Jiang Shanka had already rushed over and pushed his hand against the metal frame, knocking the gun away. The man in black naturally wouldn't give up, seeing that the helicopter was just outside. If he caught Jiang Shanka, he could still save his life. So, his eyes flashed fiercely and directly fought Jiang Shanka. In his 20 years of life, this was the first time Jiang Shanka fought with someone. But once he thought that the little girl was seriously injured because of him, Jiang Shanka couldn't calm his anger. He didn't even want to kill Jiang Shanka. Jiang Shanka was very scary when he was in a rage. It was as if he was not afraid of pain, let alone his life. The man in black's punches were punches. Their fists landed squarely on the ground. Both of them used all their strength and fought until their eyes were red. Gong Coco couldn't stand the pain, but she was a little worried when she heard the sounds of fighting. She squatted in a corner and poked her head out. She saw that the two of them had already fought for several rounds. She didn't know why, but in the era of internal energy, Gong Coco hated fighting with men the most. Not only was it not elegant, it was also degrading and ugly. But at this moment, Jiang Shanka was fighting for her. Her heart was pounding. In the past, Uncle Chio would beat bad guys for her, but every time, Uncle Chio would directly crush the other party. She didn't feel anything. On the contrary, now that she saw Jiang Shanka fighting someone of equal strength for her, she felt inexplicably nervous and worried, but also a little sweet. It was obvious that a person like Jiang Shanka would not normally fight with others. This was probably the first time in his life that he had acted like this. It was for her. Jiang Shanka kicked the man in black to the ground, then grabbed his head and slammed it against the ground twice. Only then did he interrogate him coldly. Jiang Sun sent you, right? How dare he? Looks like the lesson from last time wasn't enough. The man in black was dizzy. His eyes were unfocused as he panted. I was only asked to do this. Don't kill me at this moment. He was in despair. How could a CEO be so skilled in martial arts? Don't kill you? Jiang Shanka stood up and stomped on his abdomen. Seeing him curl into a ball in pain, Jiang Shanka felt a little better. Even if he didn't kill him, what awaited him would be more painful than death. And Jiang Sun, just you wait. The door opened again. Jiang Shanka's assistant saw his CEO in a mess and was so frightened that his voice changed. CEO. Then, the police rushed in and took away the unconscious people in the warehouse. Jiang Shanka ignored them. Instead, he walked in front of Gong Coco and carried her in his arms. Gong Coco gasped. Her hand was injured, not her leg. Moreover, Jiang Shanka had just fought and had many injuries on his body. He looked more serious than her. You're injured. Under her doe-like gaze, Jiang Shanka looked away awkwardly. Don't look. His image must be terrible right now. What should he do if the little princess in his arms hates him? Gong Kiki seemed to have guessed his thoughts. It had to be said that he was really in a sorry state right now. His hair was messy, his face was bruised, and his tailored light-colored suit had long since become dirty and tattered. Compared to his usual noble and steady appearance, it was a far cry from his usual noble and steady appearance. But why did she find him adorable? With this thought in mind, Gong Kiki actually used her uninjured hand to hook around his neck and kiss him on the cheek. It's okay. You're not ugly at all. I like it very much. Jiang Shanka looked at her in astonishment. He saw that her eyes seemed to be filled with many little stars. He smiled and found her extremely adorable. But when he saw her bleeding hand, a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital immediately. You'll be fine. Gong Kiki looked at her hand and felt the pain again. However, she obediently nodded her head. It was so cute that it made one's heart melt. The plane took off quickly. In the city, President Jiang was probably the only one who would take a plane to see a doctor. Gong Kiki's hand was fine. After applying medicine and bandaging, it was fine. Jiang Shanka personally fed her. Looking at her pale face, he couldn't help but feel heartache. Don't do such a dangerous thing next time, okay? Gong Coco's hand didn't hurt much anymore. She looked at him with puffed-up cheeks. After swallowing the food, she said, "I want to eat fish." Hearing this, Jiang Shanka quickly fed her the fish. The bones of the fish had been crushed by the machine, so Gong Coco could eat in big bites. She was so happy. Jiang Shanka fed her a mouthful and said, "No matter what, you're not allowed to joke with your body. There won't be a next time." Gong Coco picked up a piece of fruit with her uninjured left hand and stuffed it into Jiang Shanka's mouth. "Great CEO. Don't talk while eating." Chapter 898. Jiang Shanka didn't know what to do with her. After swallowing the fruit, he focused on feeding her. Seeing that her eyes were still clear, he sighed in his heart. Perhaps in Gong Coco's eyes, there was nothing to worry about? That heartless look really made people gnash their teeth in hatred. Because the wound wasn't too deep, Gong Coco said that she didn't want to take a break and wanted to continue working on the set. Jiang Shanka wondered why she was so dedicated to her work. Gong Coco's answer was very natural. "Although I'm not the main lead, and I've decided to stop acting after this, wouldn't it be irresponsible of me to be willful and delay the filming process?" Jiang Shanka didn't expect her to have such awareness and expressed his support, so he got up early in the morning to help her get dressed. Gong Coco naturally enjoyed his service. Not to mention that she was injured. Even when she wasn't injured, she accepted Jiang Shanka's care as a matter of course. Jiang Shanka thought self-deprecatingly. He didn't expect that he would take care of someone else in his life, and he did it so willingly. After Gong Coco got dressed, she very sensibly kissed him on the cheek as a reward. Jiang Shanka's face was still covered with bandages, and he didn't look as calm as he usually did. Instead, he looked much younger. Gong Coco snickered. "You look pretty good with that thing on your face." Jiang Shanka glared at the heartless little thing in front of him. He still had to think about how he was going to go to the company. He grabbed Gong Coco and kissed her fiercely. He said fiercely, "I'll deal with you when you come back. Go now." After that, he changed out of his pajamas and went to the company. After all, there was still someone waiting for him to deal with. Gong Coco nodded and ran away quickly. Yutian was waiting in the nanny van. When she saw Gong Coco, she felt a little uneasy. 2 nights ago, Lulan was really taken away by the police. Now, everyone in the crew knew that Gong Coco had a close relationship with President Jiang. Yesterday, Gong Coco didn't have any scenes, so she didn't come. The crew discussed Gong Coco for the whole day, and even Yutian was in fear. Gong Coco saw that Yutian's expression was different from before, but she didn't care. Instead, when she saw Gong Coco, she quickly reported something. "Kiki, the company didn't send you a new manager." Gong Coco nodded. This was her own idea. Anyway, she didn't plan to continue acting, so she asked Jiang Shanka to help her. Seeing that Gong Coco didn't say anything, Yutian didn't dare to say anything. However, she thought that ever since Gong Coco fell into the water last time, she had become very different. When she didn't speak, she always felt nervous and intimidated. After arriving at the set, the crew's attitude had a 180-degree change. Everyone was very attentive. Even Shuewen didn't dare to give her a hard time. Gong Coco didn't expect Jiang Shanka's identity to be so useful. It seemed that Jiang Shanka's status in this world was very high. Then, what should she do to repay his kindness? After filming the zither scene, the director got a good song from Gong Kiki and didn't dare to say anything. In order not to lose too badly, Shuewen found a stunt double to dance. Just like that scene was over. As for the result, it wasn't within Gong Kiki's consideration. Right now, she was conflicted about repaying the debt of gratitude. At this moment, Meng Xiaoqing walked over with a complicated expression. Yesterday, everyone said that Gong Coco and Jiang Shanka had an affair. Otherwise, Jiang Shanka wouldn't have helped her solve the problem so quickly. He didn't believe it and wanted to ask Gong Coco clearly. Seeing Meng Xiaoqing, Gong Coco signaled with her eyes. "What's the matter?" "Kiki." Meng Xiaoqing hesitated. Are you and Jiang Shanka really in that kind of relationship? What kind? The kind of relationship where you're being kept. Meng Xiaoqing said this with great difficulty. To be honest, if the other party was Jiang Shanka, even if she was being kept, there would still be many people chasing after her like a flock of ducks. Kept? Gong Coco frowned. Her intuition wasn't a good word. She corrected, no, he and I are husband and wife. Husband and wife. Meng Xiaoqing felt that Gong Coco was crazy. Who is Jiang Shanka? He wouldn't marry a third-rate artist as his wife. Seeing Meng Xiaoqing's big reaction, Gong Coco was a little puzzled. Why are you so anxious? Can't you be husband and wife? Meng Xiaoqing saw that her expression was sincere and didn't seem to be lying. His heart suddenly ached. Since you're his wife, why did you provoke me in the first place? He gritted his teeth as he asked. Gong Coco cursed silently. She had almost forgotten that Meng Xiaoqing was the person her predecessor liked. She touched her chin and said softly, I only got married to him 2 days ago. Contract husband and wife counts, I guess. And it was a secret marriage. This should make Meng Xiaoqing feel better, right? She didn't want Meng Xiaoqing to have a bad impression of her predecessor. She felt that her predecessor really liked Meng Xiaoqing. The reason why she wanted to marry Jiang Shanka was probably because she wanted to have someone to rely on. Meng Xiaoqing's face turned pale. His thick eyebrows were tightly knitted together, but he couldn't express the frustration in his heart. He looked at Gong Coco solemnly and turned to leave. What should he do if he didn't leave? Should he say that she changed her heart too quickly? He had just started to have feelings for her, and she turned her back on him? Wouldn't that be asking for humiliation? Gong Coco was a little confused, but she didn't think too much about it. She wasn't someone who would go to a dead end. Although she was heartless, she was still happy to be at ease. But just because she didn't look for trouble, it didn't mean that trouble wouldn't look for her. On the way back, Gong Coco's car was blocked by a group of people. Yu Tian was so frightened that she hurriedly called the police. Gong Coco blinked. She felt that this group of people was very likely the same group from yesterday. They actually dared to block people in the city. It was obvious that they were desperate. It seemed that Jiang Shanka's actions were very fast. She was afraid that Jiang Shanka wouldn't have thought that the other party would look for her. The bodyguards protecting Gong Coco didn't expect to encounter such a situation on their first day. They informed their president while protecting Gong Coco. Gong Coco, right? Come down. A person got out of the other party's car. He looked very fierce. I heard that you're Jiang Shanka's woman. Our boss wants to see you. Hurry up and come out. The passers-by around them were frightened and ran away. Gong Coco was originally thinking of how to repay Jiang Shanka. If she helped him catch this group of people, would it be considered as repayment? Anyway, those people from yesterday were all caught in one fell swoop. No one knew that she knew martial arts. This way, she could easily catch the other party's leader. Therefore, Gong Coco ignored the bodyguards and walked down. Seeing that she was obedient, the other party was very satisfied. Let's go. Our boss is still waiting for you. With that said, more than 10 people got out of the car. They looked like they would snatch Gong Coco if she didn't leave. Chapter 899. The bodyguard wanted to stop them, but Gong Coco held him back timidly. She pretended to be very scared and said, Don't fight. They have a lot of people. You guys go look for Jiang Shanka. I'll go with them. I believe they won't do anything to me, right? This hero? My husband is very rich. That person originally wanted to hit her, but seeing that Gong Coco was so sensible, he laughed along. Yes, our boss is very protective of women. Someone like you, our boss will definitely not hurt you. With that, the group of people laughed lecherously. But the bodyguard was unwilling to agree, but Gong Coco's tone deepened. Didn't Jiang Shanka ask all of you to listen to me? Seeing that Gong Coco had said so, the bodyguards couldn't say anything else. They were restrained by the other party and watched as Gong Coco went with them willingly. The bodyguards were angry. They had thought that Gong Coco was very smart because of her good looks. Who knew that she was so naive? However, the other party had more than 100 people, and they couldn't stop them. This time, this group of people had turned out in full force. They had no choice. The police had sealed off their place. When Jiang Shanka went to the company today, he went around suppressing their remaining strongholds, as if he wanted to kill them all. Jiang Sun had no choice. In the end, he made up his mind and went all out to capture Jiang Shanka's woman. The reason why they knew about the relationship between Gong Coco and Jiang Shanka was because of the incident at the mall yesterday. Gong Coco pretended to be timid the whole way. Her phone was snatched away by them, and her hands were tied up. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she wanted to cry, but didn't dare to. The person who came to capture her even wanted to pinch her face, but she avoided him. He wasn't angry and said, "Although this woman isn't very smart, she's really good-looking. Her skin is really amazing." His subordinate said, "Isn't that so? If it wasn't the best, how could Jiang Shanka be tempted by it?" Gong Coco was disgusted by their approach because the smell was too strong and their expressions were wretched. It was obvious that they were up to no good. Therefore, she lowered her head and allowed them to lead her to a remote, abandoned building after a series of twists and turns. "This is Jiang Shanka's woman? She's quite good-looking." Gong Coco was pushed into a door and saw Jiang Sun at a glance. He was nearly 40 years old. Although he was good-looking and seemed to be very amiable when he smiled, Gong Coco could still feel the evil intentions behind his eyes, which proved that he was a bad person. Hearing his boss's words, the man who brought her here quickly said, "This woman is an actress. Although he's in his 20s, he looks like a minor." Jiang Sun nodded. "Inform Jiang Shanka that his woman is in my hands. You're not allowed to call the police. Come see me alone." Otherwise, he can just wait to collect his corpse. His subordinate was a little hesitant. Would someone like Jiang Shanka lower his head for a woman? Jiang Sun sneered. "I don't dare to speak for others, but in the Jiang family, every generation is famous for being infatuated. Have you seen Jiang Shanka with a woman? This is his first woman. He can't bear to part with her." Gong Coco kept her head down as she listened. She felt that it was a little unbelievable. In her era, if a man in his 20s did not have a woman, he was either too poor, ugly, or physically handicapped. But in this era, where the culture was so open, Jiang Shanka still did not have a woman? Although she felt that it was very strange, she was more secretly delighted. It was as if she was very happy that Jiang Shanka only had her. The subordinate felt that it made sense and hurriedly left. Jiang Sun asked the others to leave, leaving only 2 of his trusted subordinates. Then he looked at Gong Coco, who had been silent all this time. "Little girl, are you frightened?" Gong Coco looked up at him. "Were you the one who sent people to kill Jiang Shanka yesterday?" Jiang Sun saw her lively eyes, and his eyes lit up. "So what if I was?" I didn't expect him to be so lucky to escape. Gong Coco looked like a curious baby and asked again, "I heard that the law in this world is very strict. A life for a life. What kind of deep hatred do you have between the 2 of you? How did it come to this?" Jiang Sun originally wanted to say that she wouldn't understand even if he told her. But seeing Gong Coco's curious and adorable look, Jiang Sun's patience suddenly increased a lot. He simply said, "If you want to blame someone, blame Jiang Shanka. The land in East City has always been the most important business place for my Black Flag gang. Who doesn't know that that piece of land is a no man's land? There are so many big shots in Haitian City who have circled around East City. But Jiang Shanka is so rich that he bought all the land in East City, saying that he wants to build a school. Since he's cutting off my path to wealth, I can only send him to his death." Gong Coco nodded, not fully understanding. In other words, Jiang Shanka had provoked this group of outlaws because of business matters. The business they were talking about was probably not something good. What does East City do? Although she had a subjective understanding, Gong Coco still wanted to know more before deciding whether to make a move. Jiang Sun sat on the chair and smiled deeply, not saying anything. A shirtless man beside him laughed and said, "Our business is naturally good business." Another short man said with a lecherous smile, "If a little girl like you goes to our place, I'm afraid that you won't be able to walk when you come out. Ha ha ha." Although Gong Coco did not understand the meaning of the last sentence, she knew the first sentence. Her mother had once told her that those things that made people feel as if they were falling into the clouds were the most poisonous things in the world. If it was a small matter, it could cause the destruction of a family. If it was a serious matter, it could even bring disaster to an entire country. These people who were selling such things were definitely not good people. Thinking of this, Gong Coco revealed a look of righteous indignation. She no longer had any psychological burden for what she was about to do. The shirtless man sized up Gong Coco without blinking. "Boss, look at this girl. She looks like a virgin?" "Virgin?" Jiang Sun looked carefully. For people like them who had seen countless women, they could tell at a glance that Gong Coco was different from others. He smiled and raised his eyebrows. "You don't say? She does look like a virgin. Could it be that Jiang Shanka can't do it? There's such a great beauty beside him, and he can't do her?" Gong Kiki was confused when she heard this. Jiang Sun slowly stood up and said anxiously, "What are you talking about? If that's the case, you guys go out first. Anyway, it'll take a while for Jiang Shanka to come. I'll help him open his woman's bud first." Then, the two confidants revealed lecherous smiles. "Boss, don't forget about us when there's good stuff." Jiang Sun sneered. "Don't worry, I won't forget about you guys. When I'm done, you guys can do it together." "Huh? Thank you, boss. Thank you, boss." Chapter 900. Gong Coco tilted her head and watched the two men walk out expectantly. She had a feeling that they were going to do something bad to her, but she didn't know what it was. Her blank look pleased Jiang Sun. He looked like a human at first, but when he stared at her now, he was as cold as a snake. "Amazing! I can't believe there's such a pure woman like you in the modern world. No wonder Jiang Shanka likes you. I wonder if he'll still like you after we fuck you." "Fuck you?" Gong Coco frowned. Her instincts told her that it wasn't a good word. "Yes." Jiang Sun took a few steps towards Gong Coco. He looked impatient. "It's very comfortable. I guarantee that you'll fall in love with this feeling after I fuck you." As he spoke, he started to take off his clothes. Gong Coco's hands were tied, and she looked like a pushover. Moreover, Jiang Sun was a good fighter himself. Why would a weak woman like Gong Coco be attracted to him? Gong Coco's expression changed when she saw that he was about to take off his pants after taking off his shirt. "You're going to take off your pants in front of me?" For the past few days, although Jiang Shanka had some thoughts, he had never exposed his body in front of her. Even when he hugged her to sleep, he was wearing pajamas. But this person, he dared to take off his pants? Jiang Sun was stunned because she sounded too surprised. He laughed. "How can I do it if I don't take off my pants?" "Don't worry. I'll make you feel good." Gong Keek's eyes widened as she uttered each word slowly. "Brother said that all men who take off their pants in front of me should be beaten to death." Jiang Sun laughed exaggeratedly. "Your brother is really interesting. Yes, he should be beaten to death. If he's not beaten to death, the wolf will eat the little sheep." As he spoke, he took off his pants with a lewd smile and pounced on Gong Coco. But in the next second, Gong Coco suddenly disappeared. Jiang Sun was shocked. A huge force came from behind, and he was kicked to the ground. As his pants were down to his knees, he couldn't get up immediately. Just as he was about to call for help, a large ball of hemp rope was stuffed into his mouth. He tried to grab it with his hands, but his hands were twisted in a strange position. This series of actions only took a few seconds. Jiang Sun was sweating from the pain. Only then did he realize that what he had brought back was not a little lamb, but a man-eating tiger. He looked at Gong Coco in horror, as if he was looking at a monster. Gong Coco rubbed her wrist and kicked him angrily. "How dare you take off your pants in front of me? How dare you take off your pants?" As he spoke, his anger was still not appeased, and he kicked him again, kicked the other party into a shrimp. There was a reason why Gong Coco reacted so strongly. After Gong Yimo and Gong Dai left, Gong Chiyu, as the older brother, shouldered the heavy burden of taking care of his younger sister. especially when his younger sister was 15 years old and became more and more beautiful. Gong Qiyu was simply worried sick. How could he let his younger sister know? All these years, his younger sister was either staying in the palace or running around with Qixingfeng. Qixingfeng's mind was only 10 years old. His younger sister followed him, and even if she went out to see the world, she still looked ignorant. It was really worrying. Should he find a nanny in the palace to explain erotic pictures to his younger sister? Gong Qiyu blushed. His younger sister was not married yet. It was a bit premature to do that. In the end, he decided to find the old palace made to tell his younger sister about the difference between men and women. In the end, Gong Coco listened carefully on the surface, but in fact, her eyes never left the book in her hand. Seeing that Gong Coco was ignorant, the old palace made directly started from the most basic things, such as following the father at home, following the husband after marriage, following the son after the husband's death, and some nonsense about men and women not touching each other. How could Gong Coco listen? Seeing that many methods were not effective, Gong Qiyu sighed. Fortunately, because the palace people in Daiyu State worshipped Gong Yimo and Gong Dai very much, and also respected the children they left behind, the palace was peaceful. No one dared to be disrespectful to Gong Coco, and no one dared to do anything excessive to her. So Gong Coco was innocent until she was 18 years old. Gong Qiyu couldn't do anything to his younger sister. Seeing that she had no intention of being enlightened at all, he just let her be. Anyway, his younger sister had him in the palace, Qixingfeng when she went out, and the prince consort when she got married. However, he was worried that his younger sister would be taken advantage of without them knowing. So Gong Qiyu repeatedly warned her that if any man took off his pants and exposed his lower body in front of her, except for her prince consort, she would directly kill everyone else. He would bear all the consequences. He also wanted Gong Coco to swear that she would do as she was told before letting her go. Gong Coco touched her chin and looked at the man lying on the ground, a fierce light flashing in her eyes. She was no longer a princess in this world. It seemed a little overboard to kill someone, but letting him go would violate her oath. What should she do? Looking at Jiang Sun's smooth but Gong Coco took the coat he put on the chair and covered it with it in disgust. Then, she stepped on it fiercely. Jiang Sun raised his head, the veins on his neck bursting. He let out a hoarse scream, and his eyes were about to pop out. However, because his mouth was stuffed, no one outside could hear him. Gong Coco stepped on his but several times as if it was not enough. As she stepped, she said, "Who asked you to be disobedient? Who asked you to take off your pants? Let's see if you can still take them off." One had to know that Jiang Sun was on a concrete floor, and Gong Coco's strength was not proportional to her appearance. One could imagine the pain. Jiang Shanka was about to go crazy. Although Gong Coco was very powerful, how could she be so bold? She dared to enter the tiger's den alone? He rushed over with his men and ignored their warnings. He called the police and got the police to surround the place. Since the necklace around Gong Keek's neck was a locator, Jiang Shanka was able to easily locate her location. Without hesitation, he began to snatch her away. The two men guarding the door were still wondering why there was no movement inside. Logically speaking, the little girl should be crying and shouting. However, after a while, there was a noise coming from downstairs. The two men were shocked. One of them's phone rang, and he quickly picked it up. "Oh no, Brother Hu, the police are here." When Brother Hu heard this, he immediately knocked on the door. "Boss, damn it, the police are here." Jiang Shanka dared to call the police. Jiang Sun felt like he was about to die. A man's most vulnerable part had been in close contact with the rough floor. Both of his hands were fractured. He lay on the ground, unable to get up. With tears and saliva all over the floor, Gong Coco was still angry. This person did not do anything good in the past. He deserved to be bullied by her. The people outside heard no sound from inside and felt that something was wrong. Just as they were about to rush in, they saw the door being kicked open. Jiang Shanka stood at the door with a cold look in his eyes, as if he wanted to eat them up. The people behind him quickly rushed in and aimed their guns at them. "Don't move. Put your hands up." The two men had no choice but to surrender. However, they were in despair. They were done for. Chapter 901. Why didn't Jiang Shanka play by the rules? Did he not care about that woman at all? But the truth was, Jiang Shanka pushed the two of them aside and kicked the last door open. In the dust, Jiang Shanka's anxious expression froze. The scene in front of him seemed to have overturned his understanding. Because it was an ordinary narrow door and Jiang Shanka was blocking it, the people outside could not see what was happening inside. Jiang Shanka hurriedly walked in and closed the door with a bang. And in front of him, Gong Coco withdrew her domineering foot from Jiang Sun in embarrassment and rubbed it on the ground. She did not expect Jiang Shanka to arrive so quickly. She had not caught her yet. Jiang Shanka looked at Jiang Sun, who was lying on the ground, not knowing if she was dead or alive. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. God knew that he had been worried the entire way. Although Gong Coco was very powerful, she was so innocent. Would something happen to her? But the scene in front of him told him that he was thinking too much. If he had come a little later, Jiang Sun would have died. He glanced at Jiang Sun and realized that Jiang Sun had taken off her pants. It seemed that she wanted to do something to Gong Coco, but he would never have dreamed that Gong Coco knew martial arts. His cold expression was very scary. Gong Coco could not help but wonder if she had done something wrong. Or rather, she should not have messed with him so badly. Jiang Shanka was still angry at first, but seeing that she was fine and looked frightened, his heart softened instantly. He shouted, "Come over here!" Gong Coco replied with an "oh" and walked over to him obediently. She was a little confused as to why she was so obedient. Was it because he was the first person in the world who knew her secret? Or was it because he was as scary as her brother when he was angry? When she was 2 steps away from him, Jiang Shanka finally could not hold it in and pulled her into his arms. "Silly! You silly girl! Who asked you to interfere in this matter? Since you know martial arts, you just need to protect yourself. Do you know how scared I am of you acting so rashly?" Gong Coco was hugged tightly and felt a little confused. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm very strong." Although her kung fu was only average in her previous world, in this world, her kung fu was already very powerful. Even if there were very powerful weapons here, she could still run away if she couldn't beat them. Jiang Shanka was furious. "I'm just afraid that you'll be cheated." "Deceived?" Gong Coco asked in bewilderment. She felt that she was still very smart. Jiang Shanka released her, looked into her eyes, and pointed to the man on the ground. "Men are bad. In order to achieve their goals, those Shua will come up with any lies. Even if you know martial arts, you don't understand the sinister nature of people's hearts." "I'm still worried about you. But fortunately, you're more sensible than I thought." He heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but ask, "How did you become enlightened?" "Enlightened?" Gong Coco looked at Jiang Sun on the ground. "You're asking me why I hit him?" Jiang Shanka nodded and hugged her waist. He suddenly smiled. "Did you listen to what I said before?" He had told her not to let anyone near her. Gong Coco opened her mouth, but chose to be honest in the end. "Brother said it." Jiang Shanka was stunned and then asked, "What did your brother say?" Gong Coco said in a firm tone, "Brother said that other than the prince consort, all men who take off their pants and expose their lower body in front of me will be beaten to death." However, she quickly added, "But I didn't beat him to death. I only taught him a lesson." Jiang Shanka's expression cracked. He didn't expect that his brother-in-law in the other world would teach Kiki such a thing without saying anything. Looking at Jiang Sun, who was lying on the ground, he could imagine what had happened to his lower body. If he had done something to Gong Coco back then, Jiang Shanka felt a lingering fear. He didn't expect that his gentlemanly act would save his life. After recovering from his shock, Jiang Shanka told her very sternly, "Kiki, prince consort means husband. I'm your husband now, so I'm your prince consort. You won't treat me like this, right?" Gong Coco had a strange expression on her face. "But we're a contractual couple. That's fake, right?" Jiang Shanka pursed his lips and smiled. "Soon it won't be." Gong Coco was confused. Then what are we? We're a real couple. Silly girl. He leaned his forehead against Gong Coco's and sighed softly. He felt his heart slowly settle down. Although we haven't known each other for a long time, when I was on my way here, I kept thinking about what I would do if something happened to you. Just thinking about it made me lose my rationality. Gong Coco's heart warmed. She smiled sweetly and looked up at him. If something really happened to me, would you still want me? She glanced at Jiang Sun on the ground. He just said that you won't like me anymore after he has sex with me. Is that really the case? What nonsense are you talking about? Jiang Shanka glared at her. He felt that his calm and steady CEO aura was about to be destroyed by this little girl. What a silly girl, he sighed helplessly. Then he was defeated by Gong Coco's thirsty gaze. If that day really comes, I'll still like you. I'll like you from the first time I saw you. It's strange that my heart would be stolen by a little fool. He pinched Gong Coco's nose helplessly. Gong Coco forgot to resist. She just stared at him blankly. She didn't know why, but when Jiang Shanka said that he liked her, her heart kept bubbling. Her chest felt warm and swollen, as if she wanted him to continue saying it. She wanted him to tell her that he liked her over and over again. Say it again? Gong Coco stared at him without blinking. Her face was full of anticipation. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shanka smiled and teased her. Then will you marry me? Gong Coco frowned and bargained. Say it again, and I'll tell you. Jiang Shanka couldn't do anything about it. He could only say it again in a gentle voice. I like you. He saw Gong Coco's eyes suddenly light up like two bright little stars. He couldn't help but laugh. I like you. I only like you. Little one, do you like me? Before Gong Coco could say anything, Jiang Sun suddenly moaned from the ground. This made the two of them realize that there was still a living person here. Perhaps she could still be saved. Jiang Shanka then remembered that this scumbag hadn't been dealt with yet. Moreover, there was a large group of police officers waiting for him outside, but he was flirting here. Thinking of this, the thick-skinned couldn't help but blush. Thus, he coughed and said, This isn't the place to talk, so you don't have time to think. Tell me, do you like me? You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.